Yep. Inside, I want to kill myself. We are on an 0-7 run over the last 2 days. After tonight was just complete bullshit. So that's how I'm going to start off this show. Horrible Sunday, 1-5. I don't even know what to tell you about that. I just don't want to do this anymore. I have never seen anything like this, man. With the slump continuing, 2 straight losses, not a good day at all. 0-4. I just have not had a good season, man. What can this slump that I'm on? The slump continues. I've reached a new peak, actually. I'm going to burn my Bruins hat, man. I don't know what is going on with the Bruins. March 8th, is that what it is? I don't even know. It's March 9th, I think. Who even knows, man? I don't know what day it is anymore. I don't even know what day it is anymore, man. Back with you after the worst day that I could possibly have. Back with you, as I always am. Until I die, at least. 0-2 yesterday, and yesterday did not go well for me. 0-5. The worst month that I've ever had in my 18 years doing this. I don't know what to even tell you about this anymore. Broke the slump yesterday as the slump just continues. The slump continues. Somebody fucking kill me, please. I don't even know what I should do at this point other than potentially end it all. What's up, everybody? It's Toad back with you, Toadstool Sports. It is Thursday, January 1st. Happy New Year's, everybody. We wound up with a good 2025 overall, even though, of course, I had to stop actually funding my betting habit myself. But I've been giving you guys winners, so you guys are benefiting from it, I hope. As yesterday was another winning day, 2-0. Going into September, I think I was down on the year. If you track everything as if I were betting all of these things, I was down. I mean, I was up until I got fired. I was down on the year up until, I think I was down probably, I don't know, like the equivalent of, like if my typical like betting amount was like to win 300 on every game, and I think I was down. I mean, I'd gotten back up a little bit through the baseball season, so I think I was probably minus $2,000 or something, and wound up finishing the year around plus 18 grand, something like that. So it would have been like my third best year, or second best year, actually, maybe ever, despite being down with a few months to go. That's how hot I have been over the last few months. So I'm glad about that. Jeffrey, what's up? Thanks for hanging out. Kyle, thank you, everybody. Yeah, I appreciate it. Happy New Year. Yesterday, we got the win on Gardner-Webb. Gardner-Webb was winning that game by 12 at halftime, so it's like this is going to be easy. That spread, by the way, increased further. If you could have gotten it at, I think, 11, maybe 11.5 when I did the show, and then it was 12.5, I think, was the best number I saw on that. Luckily for us, they covered every number, but it should have been way easier because they were winning by 12 at halftime. And then I looked, and all of a sudden they were down 12 points, I think, near the end of the game. I'm like, oh, come on, man. It's so ridiculous. Like, they had the worst second half you could possibly have. I know they're a bad team, but they were so good in the first half. You can't blow that. And then they still wound up only losing the game by 8, I believe, or 9. 9, I think. So I think they covered every number. Or was it 10? It might have been 10, but they still covered the 10.5, man, even if you got that worst number there. So we got that, and then there was no sweat with the Bulls play. The Bulls, I'm pretty sure they just wire-to-wire win for the Bulls. I didn't really pay attention to it, but very easy. 12.5, nice. Yeah, the Cheez-It. They didn't sacrifice an anthropomorphic Cheez-It, though, like the Pop-Tart Bowl. Maybe they should, because they can't compete with the Pop-Tart Bowl right now. Cheez-It, they had like a big Cheez-It jester, I think, is what it was. I think, Jeffrey, you tagged me in that yesterday. I forgot they had Prince, what is his name again? Prince Chedward, yeah. They have Prince Chedward come out, and then he takes his throne, and they have a Cheez-It jester. It's pretty ridiculous, but it still doesn't reach anywhere near the level of the Pop-Tart Bowl. And we still have the Duke's Mayo Bowl to look forward to still. We still have not watched a coach get doused in mayo yet. So, hey, we still have that. What do we, that humiliation ritual to go there. So we still have that. Tyson, what's up, man? Thanks for hanging out. Today, I'm going to have 4 plays today. One is in the playoffs, college football playoffs, which I have to do it.
Playoffs? Don't talk about it. Playoffs? You kidding me? Playoffs? I just hope we can win a game. Another game.
And then I'm going to have 3 college basketball plays today, actually, and I'm skipping NHL and NBA today. Don't like the cards. Oh, yeah, that's right. I almost said Mayor McCheese. That's McDonald's. Prince Chedward came out on a cheese dragon. Which is pretty wild, yeah. Dude, sacrificing the Pop-Tarts and eating them is so much more demonic, though. And in the Pop-Tart Bowl, as you saw, they now have 6 Pop-Tarts. They have 2 teams of Pop-Tarts, the Sprinkles and the Swirls. BYU picked the Sprinkles, so they were going to eat all 3 of them, but then the Slammin' Strawberry jumped behind the toaster and I guess ran off and survived, and it's a whole marketing campaign because if you saw Slammin' Strawberry was like jacked because what they're doing is they're advertising these new protein Pop-Tarts. So that's why they're doing that. And then they did sacrifice Frosted Cherry, which, by the way, good Pop-Tart variety. It's a classic. And they sacrificed Cookies and Cream. So those are the 2 Pop-Tarts that no longer exist in the Pop-Tart Bowl lore. Joining Cinnamon Roll from last year and Frosted Strawberry from the year before that. Yeah, I have my Pop-Tart Bowl lore. I know it all, man. And they resurrected Frosted Strawberry last year as a one-eyed zombie Pop-Tart. What parade is that? The Mummers Parade? It's a New Year's Day parade, right? Whatever. I don't even know. Everything's cold and windy. It's snowing up here again. We got snow on Christmas and on New Year's here. All right, I want to get into the games here, though, because I hope this doesn't take that long, but I always say that. It probably will. College basketball, I mean, there's a decent amount of games today, but I don't know how many of these I really want to talk about. Like, I'm probably just going to limit it to the ones that I found more interesting, but conference play is underway, man. Horizon play is continuing. SoCon is continuing. The Sun Belt is beginning today, I believe, and so is the A-Sun, or maybe the Sun Belt already started. I don't know, but all these conferences are in play today. Missouri Valley is continuing. The WAC might be starting conference play. And Big Sky, I believe, is starting as well. OVC is continuing. And then we got a bunch of Big West as well. All these conferences in action today. A lot of stuff going on here. There's some afternoon action. Oakland and Youngstown State, it's an interesting game in the horizon. Both of these teams are fairly decent in the conference. Oakland, we just faded them in their last game. They took that loss to Wright State. They were coming off that big game against Michigan State, although I think they went into the break on that note, but I still decided to fade them. We got the win with Wright State. Now they got Youngstown. Do they overlook Youngstown, though? Because Youngstown's been kind of mediocre this year, and Robert Morris is up next. Robert Morris were the winners of this conference last year. I don't know. I kind of doubt it. I think Oakland isn't going to really overlook anybody after that loss. Youngstown, they're going to show up as well, though. They just lost to Detroit Mercy, which is not the greatest loss, although Detroit Mercy is playing decently in the conference right now, and they're probably improved from how horrible they were the last couple of years, if I recall. So what do we do with all that? I mean, I kind of just default to the market when I don't really have any better opinion on the game. And the market is telling you Youngstown State is the side if you want to take the market for what it's worth. Youngstown up from 1 to 2.5 here. So you're losing a little bit of value if you do want to play them. 86% of the cash on them, 50% of the tickets evenly split. Oakland is very battle-tested, though. I don't know. I mean, I'm passing on that game. The money is saying Youngstown. If you want to do anything with that information, it's up to you, obviously. We got, I don't know, some of these other games, man, I'm just like, I don't even care. Again, if you want me to talk about some of these others, I guess I will. Some of these Missouri Valley games get a little bit interesting. So these are games that caught my eye is like maybe I want to look at playing this game. Valpo is playing Southern Illinois. Valpo is coming off a couple of pretty tough games, man. They played Murray State. And then you do have to look at the schedule to see when these teams had these breaks, right? So they had the break after Murray State. They came out of the break. They faced Northern Iowa. Northern Iowa was a good team, and they really, really slowed the game down and played ridiculously ugly. Valpo was kind of in that game. It looks ugly. They lost 58-48, but they put in a big effort, man, against a good Northern Iowa team. So I would kind of be looking to fade Valpo off of a game like that, but I don't know if they're necessarily going to overlook Southern Illinois, although Southern Illinois is not playing that well right now either. But if you look at what Southern Illinois did, they had a huge game going into the break. Three, really. They went to overtime against Richmond, which is a non-conference game. Then they started conference play. They played Illinois State, who's actually one of the best teams in the conference right now, to within 7. They played Bradley to within 4, and Bradley is one of the best teams in the conference as well. That was on the road. Then they went on the road to Murray State coming out of the break, and they only lost by 3. Murray State actually pretty good this year as well. John Morant's alma mater there. Playing them to within 3 on the road is no small feat, man. So I think Southern Illinois is actually in a sandwich spot here because they were an underdog in that game. They played well. They were probably an underdog, I would guess, of, I don't know, maybe several points. I would have to actually go look, find the betting history there. And up next, they got Belmont, man. And Belmont may be the very best team in this conference right now. So I actually think the spot is worse for Southern Illinois here. So I would be looking to take the points with Valpo in this one if I was going to play it. But I think they're coming off a big game themselves, man. So I worry. And the money is saying Southern Illinois with 67% of the tickets on Valpo, 86% of the cash on SIU. Is that what they refer to themselves as SIU, I think. Southern Illinois down from 8.5 to 8 here on the line. It is a pretty low total in the 140s, which makes taking the points a little bit better. So I don't know, but the market read is kind of disagreeing with me on that. But the spot really looks bad for Southern Illinois to me in that one. I guess if you want to take that information for what it's worth, which is probably not much because it's not one of my strong opinions. But Southern Illinois is also literally the bottom of Ken Palm's luck index. So that kind of indicates that you don't necessarily want to fade them because Ken Palm is saying that they've actually way underperformed. He has them facing the 69th strongest schedule. So they face a strong schedule. They're in the top 100 in his defensive efficiency rankings. He actually has them above Bradley, believe it or not, in his overall rankings, which is crazy. The Mountain West, very, very competitive this year, it looks like. So, I'm not really looking to fade them right now. And he's got Valpo. Valpo's also a better defensive team. They play slow, and I believe Southern Illinois wants to speed it up. So all of that for what it's worth. Hold on, let me look. Yeah, Southern Illinois plays a faster tempo, so they're kind of this weird combo, one of those teams that plays fast, but they don't actually score as well as they defend. A lot of stuff going on in that game, man. Like, if Southern Illinois is able to push the tempo in that game, that will throw Valpo out of their element because Valpo wants to play slow. So that is one. There are a few indicators that maybe you shouldn't fade Southern Illinois here. Let's just say that. So it's a tough one. Alexander, what's up, man? Thanks for hanging out. Northern Alabama, where are they at? North Alabama is playing, Stetson. I mean, North Alabama is obviously the way better team here. Stetson, they're awful. Stetson just got smoked by Oklahoma, although that was probably expected, although Oklahoma's not great. But I don't even know, was that game after the break or before the break? That was before the break, so they have been off since the holidays. Now they're starting conference play. They should show up for the game. But North Alabama, if they are not in a bad spot, then they're probably going to show up as well for their conference opener. Yeah, North Alabama's been off since the 19th, but you get into the rest versus rust argument, and I'm going to be playing against a team that I think is going to be on the rust side of things. That one of my plays today is going to be against probably the team that's been off for the longest out of all of these teams. It's not North Alabama, but North Alabama's been off since December 19th. They lost pretty badly on the road to a pretty strong Loyola Marymount team. But because they've been off since then and they went into the break, losing 2 games in a row, including losing to Alabama A&M, which is pretty inexcusable, though we did have a winner with Alabama A&M on my show here. I gave out a winner on them in some game. I forget which game it was. I think it was more recent than that. It wasn't that one, unfortunately. I wasn't that good. I don't think. Although North Alabama actually had beaten San Francisco the game before that. Actually, no. You know what? Was it? I think it was this game. I think I did give out a winner on this game because North Alabama had beaten San Francisco on the road. They had a bunch of days off, which broke their momentum, I think, and they had to go back out to California to play Loyola Marymount after that. I don't know. But whatever. They had a weird schedule there where they had to go out to California twice. Very, very strange. Having a little brother in between the two in Alabama. Now, they've had a bunch of days off. I think having these days off should help them, like break that momentum. Now, the offenses can come out a little bit slow here, but I just don't see this being a really bad spot for either team, really. So in that case, I kind of look towards the better team, unless you think that they're being overvalued, which maybe they are in the market. But this isn't really a game where the public's going to be getting involved. I would probably lay it with North Alabama, but I don't have a strong opinion whatsoever on that game. You lost with the Stars and Ducks, and won with the Pacers and Devils. Lost with the Suns as well. This is why I practice selectivity. Let's say Stars. I'm shocked that they got absolutely annihilated like that. Although I worried a little bit that they might actually be looking ahead to getting revenge against Chicago today. Also, the Stars played DeSmith in net last night, by the way. So they used their second-string goalie last night. So that probably hurt them a little bit as well. Thank you, sir. Yeah, I don't know if you have an opinion on that game or not, but people might see something I don't, so I don't know. That game, though, I mean, the way that I look at it, I just don't see a whole lot there. But, you know, you can do with that information what you want. Evansville at Illinois State. As I pointed out, Illinois State, they're actually one of the best teams in the Mountain West. Ken Baum has a lot of these teams, like, in the top 100 or close to the top 100. Missouri Valley, it's going to be crazy, man. It's going to be competitive. I don't know which team I expect to come out of the Missouri Valley right now. Illinois State is definitely in the mix. I think Ken Baum has them in his top 100. Evansville is bad. They're not one of the better teams in this conference. But Evansville just played pretty competitively against 3 straight conference opponents. So I believe they're 0-3 in the conference, but they played Belmont and Drake before the break. Drake is, of course, not exactly as good as they were the last couple of years, but they got their program built up, and then they had the Ben McCollum thing in there for 1 year. Continued to be really good, and Drake doesn't look like they've dropped off that much, even though they've dropped off a little bit. That was a good performance from Evansville against both of those teams, man. Well, actually, I forgot about Belmont. Belmont might be the best team in this conference. And then Evansville came out of the break, and they actually played decently against Bradley, too, on the road, only losing by 8. I always like to look at the box score, like look at the game flow here. Like, was this game really that close? Yeah, it was. Evansville was within a couple of scores, like almost all the way in this game. So, yeah, they put in a full effort in that game, man. Ideally, yes, they're going to try to step it up for Illinois State here, who is one of the top teams in the conference, but second straight road game in a few days after that huge performance. Evansville might just run out of gas here, man. For Illinois State, they did just beat Drake on the road, so they are coming off a decent win there on the road. I assume that Illinois State was probably favored in this game, I would imagine. Yeah, they're a small favorite in this game, it looks like, at least according to Ken Baum's projections. But they don't really have anything upcoming. I mean, Drake isn't what they were the last couple of years, so I think I would have to lay it with Illinois State in this one. But I thought about it. It didn't make my card, and the money is disagreeing with me on that and coming in on the Evansville side. Again, it could be numbers, guys, right? Because a lot of times you'll see numbers guys, they will just play the number. Like, I think this number is too high on Illinois State, and they won't really look at the situation. And I try to look at both, but I weigh the situation more heavily. So I'm guessing that where the money is disagreeing with me like this, I think it's probably numbers guys saying that Illinois State was probably favored by more than what they should be. because sometimes the books do have to jack up the number on these favorites. Illinois State down from 15 to 13.5 here. 75% of the tickets, 99% of the cash on Evansville, though. So Evansville looks like they're getting the money, and the total is low at 144.5. So if you want to do with that information what you want, as I always say, Illinois State, they play somewhat slow, and they're somewhat high in Ken Palm's luck index. They're a balanced team, though, and Ken Palm has them 79th overall. He has them in the top 90 in both offense and defense, so they're definitely a decent team, and he does have Belmont a little bit better than that and also balanced. Now, Illinois State is going to try to slow that game down, though, which also means you might not want to lay the points with a slow-down team like that. They might frustrate Evansville, though, because Evansville wants to play a little bit faster than they do. They're like a mid-tempo team. Evansville, very bad offensively, though. Evansville has faced a fairly difficult schedule, though, at 71st in Ken Palm's rankings. And he has them low in the luck index, which actually means they've underperformed a little bit at 326. So, bunch of information there for you. You're going with Alabama, or you're traveling to Alabama. Route 66 doesn't go through Alabama, right? It goes north of it. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it goes north of it. It's further south once you get further west. I'm just saying it because you got Route 66 as your avatar. Yeah, I told you Georgia Tech was the side that I leaned to in that game against Duke, man, based on the situation. You guys were saying Duke was going to smoke them. I didn't think so. I didn't think it would be that close, but I was expecting Duke to win by like 15 to 20 maybe in that game. Yeah, Georgia Tech might be a fade after that game because they pretty much played their guts out in that game. You know, I talk about when teams do that, they tend to fall flat in the next game. So something to look out for with Georgia Tech whenever they play next, which is probably soon. Cal Baptist is at UT Arlington in WAC play here. It is WAC. Some of these, actually all of these teams have already played one game in the conference. Cal Baptist, I would fade them in this game because they played the new top team in the WAC, which is Utah Valley, who is probably pretty happy that Grand Canyon and Seattle both left the conference to go into bigger conferences. Grand Canyon went to the Mountain West because Grand Canyon was kind of dominating the WAC over the last couple of years. And who was the other? Oh, yeah, Seattle went to the West Coast Conference. So Utah Valley now is pretty much the top team here. Kind of interesting that happened right after Utah Valley was the scene of the Charlie Kirk assassination, which is pretty bizarre. I don't know what's going on there, man. You know me with all my conspiracy brain stuff going on here. Don't know if there's any correlation there at all, but it is weird. But Utah Valley, Cal Baptist played close against Utah Valley. Cal Baptist is one of the better teams in this conference right now as well. This was a big game for them, man. It was close. Cal Baptist had the lead multiple times, and then they had a stretch where they just didn't score after they were down 2 with 5:57 to go. They didn't score for a stretch of like 5 minutes, or not 5 minutes. Let me see. What was that? Actually, yeah, it was. They didn't score for about 5 minutes, which is brutal because they were right in that game, man. Brutal way to lose that game. Now they have to come off of that, and they got to go down to play at UT Arlington. I think it's kind of a bad spot for Cal Baptist. UT Arlington, I actually think, is at a positive spot. So I was close to making this a play. UT Arlington lost at home against Tarleton State. Tarleton State's been decent in this conference recently, but it seems like they always overperform, and I don't know why that is. Like Tarleton State, the analytics, Ken Palm like always has them as being lucky and like not as good as they actually are. Like I was fading them 2 years ago, and it was somewhat to my detriment. I just couldn't get Tarleton State right that year until they lost in the conference tournament, of course. But UT Arlington just lost to them as a favorite, which it seems like Tarleton State just keeps doing this. But off of that game, I think UT Arlington's going to show up here. They're staying at home. They just lost as a favorite. The only way that I could play this game is to grab the points with UT Arlington. Cal Baptist is taking some of the money. They're up to 2.5 here. 75% of the tickets and 83% of the cash on them. It's a low total at 135, so taking the points kind of makes more sense in a game like this unless there's a huge like tempo correlation against it, which there is not because UT Arlington plays very slow, but Ken Palm does have them pretty high in his luck index. So I kind of worry about that. But UT Arlington, they're also a very imbalanced team, but they're actually in Ken Palm's top 100 defensively. So they can't score, but they play solid defense. That's what you get out of UT Arlington. Cal Baptist, they also play slow, and they're even higher in Ken Palm's luck index, and they've actually faced a bit of a weaker schedule too. And they're a little bit weaker on defense, but they are the better offense. So you want to put that all in a blender or whatever. I think this is actually the strongest one that I've talked about so far. Like if I was going to add a fourth play to my card, it would be Arlington in this one plus the points. That's the way that I would play that one. It's, I mean, it's close, to be honest. It is close to a play for me. I have to go on feel, like where I like where do I stop? Where do I end my card? You know what I mean? Georgia Tech got out-rebounded badly. They made more field goals and threes. Well, yeah, but again, if Georgia Tech was like shooting hot or whatever, and that had something to do with why they were in that game, the refs countered it again. Like, yeah, if Duke is getting sent to the line all the time, that almost like counters it, though. I'd have to look at the box score. But yeah, I mean, it was the game. It definitely was a Georgia Tech cover. Like, I think regardless of the way you look at it, like Duke was favored by too many points in that game, in that spot, and Georgia Tech showed up. Even if they did get hot from shooting, Duke gets all the calls, man. So that's another thing that's. The refs are trying to swing it towards Duke, I guess, to try to at least get them to win the game. The books are probably going to win money on the side on that game if Georgia Tech just covers. So probably not a lot of money line parlays involving Duke yesterday just because they were such a heavy money line favorite, but who knows? So I don't know, but overall, I think that free throw disparity might kind of counter the shooting, and it probably kind of boils down to Georgia Tech was still the correct side statistically in that game as well. Garrett, you were correct about Miami. That was a good call by you. There was a pick six that really threw that game in the other direction. I kind of like it because Ohio State fans, like just thinking that they're better than the SEC or whatever, and they were using the Tennessee bowl game to shit on the SEC. I'm like, really? That's your ammo? The Music City Bowl with Tennessee having like close to a dozen opt-outs in that game. And I gave out that play on the show on Illinois for reasons. I think Illinois is terrible. And these Ohio State fans are talking about how good Illinois is. I'm like, you have to be kidding me. Illinois is not good. They just had a more full roster for that game, and they had more motivation in that game, which was my handicap in that game. Tennessee would be a favorite of about 6 points against Illinois in a neutral, and they would probably win 60 to 70% of the time when they play Illinois. So these people are just stupid. Like, that's not ammo. Like, if you look at the power ratings, guys, they do have the Big Ten better than the SEC right now. Not as a whole, but like the best teams in the Big Ten are better than the best teams in the SEC. So they do have that being the case. Like Ohio State, even though they lost yesterday, they were the number one team in the power rankings, the things that the odds makers use. The odds makers would have Ohio State favored over everybody, including Indiana. Ohio State, I think, would be about a 2-point favorite against them. And now that matchup's not going to happen, but that's about what it would have been, I think. They have Indiana as the number 2 team, and then I believe Oregon, number 3. Notre Dame is up there, even though they didn't even make the playoff at all, which I thought was BS. And people are now, dude, this is another thing. I think things might be rigged because Miami beating Ohio State makes the committee look so good for putting Miami in. But it's like, yeah, well, leaving Notre Dame out is still ridiculous, though. Notre Dame is still actually better than Miami. Notre Dame has the experience. And you're going to put James Madison and Tulane in this thing instead of Notre Dame? I mean, it's just, the whole thing is ridiculous. And Notre Dame would be favored over Miami fairly significantly as well. So, I mean, it is what it is. And then these, the Ohio State fans and whatever, they can't even tell you who the best team in the SEC is. Like, they'll tell you that it's Georgia, but I would probably tell you that it's actually Alabama. I think it's close between Alabama and Georgia, and I think they're the next teams behind those 4 that I just mentioned. The next ones I think are probably Alabama and Georgia in whichever order. Like, I think it probably varies between power ratings guys will have different orders between these teams, but that's kind of the way that I order them as far as how good these teams actually are. And I do have Tennessee as a top 25 team. Very good offense and terrible defense, and I do not have Illinois in the top 25. So I guess, I'm just ranting, but, you like the points with Alabama. I do not disagree with that. It's not my play, though. Garrett, hell yeah. What's up, man? Iowa plus the points. Yes, that was a good one. I kind of wish I gave that out as a play. Out of the whole slate yesterday, that was probably the closest for me to being a play. I just didn't know what Vandy's motivation was actually going to look like in that game. I had a hard time gauging it because they still did have like a really good season. Like, I think what's the word I'm looking? They exceeded expectations still. Vandy did. So both of those teams did, but better defense wins out, especially in these bowl games, man, when these finesse offenses like Vandy, like I said yesterday, they come in cold, man. So I told you, like, Iowa early in that game, those would have won as well. The first quarter, first half, Iowa was winning the game outright after both. So, again, these teams that run the football and play defense, they are able to start right out of the gate in these bowl games because the long layoff doesn't have much of an impact on that. And I did say the same thing about Utah. Jeffrey, I think, did bet Utah yesterday. Utah did cover, but their defense actually started kind of poor, which was interesting. They were actually losing the game 14-7 really early on, although I wasn't that concerned about it at that point. I was like, yeah, they're still going to win this game. At that point, I was a little bit concerned that maybe they wouldn't cover it because I did pick them against the spread in my bowl pick'em, but which is not for really any money. Cause bowl pick'em is just craziness, man. Georgia Tech is at home against BC. Could be a situation to play BC as an underdog, man. I bet BC will not be a huge underdog in that game because Georgia Tech is really not good either. Utah is good, man. I thought they would win the Big 12 this year. They lost their coach now, though, Whittingham. He left prior to the bowl game. He's going to Michigan. So Michigan's going to be really good under him, man. He's been at Utah for forever, and he just gets overlooked. Utah's been awesome. It's just, I don't know. They just haven't won the Big 12. I don't think they've won the Big. Maybe they did win they were in the Pac-12 for a while. Then they moved to the Big 12. But Utah always gave all those teams a problem because Utah was like the only physical team. And you know me, I'm old school. I love teams that play physical defense and smash mouth rushing attacks and whatever. Like John Gruden. I like seeing big bodies bang. Dude, that's a clip that I need to get. I got to add that to my arsenal here for drops, yeah. But that was also Utah against, Nebraska. I'm sorry, Nate, but Nebraska is very, very bad at defending the run, and Nebraska was also without Raiola in that game as well. So, yeah, Nebraska was just completely outmatched in that game. But yes, John Gruden. Dude, John Gruden was one of the best Monday night analysts. I love him as a coach. I love his QB class, QB camp, where he basically like hits on all the players and whatever. But he would say such like sexual things when he was on Monday Night Football too. And it was just so hilarious. And up here in Boston, we used to have Toucher and Rich, but they had a falling out. They originally were on one of the Boston rock stations, but they talked about sports enough that they moved over to being the morning show on one of the sports radio stations up here, 98.5, the Sports Hub in Boston, which is the biggest sports radio station. Toucher and Rich, they were probably the biggest morning show, actually. And they had this dynamic where it was like Toucher was this just drunk idiot that was like the comedic aspect of it, and Rich was like really good at producing and was like the straight man. The dynamic was awesome, but they had like a falling out, which is very unfortunate. And Rich, I think, is doing his own show now somewhere else. But on that show, they used to have these games. Like they always had caller participation and whatever. Some of these games were such great ideas. One of them, every Tuesday morning after John Gruden did the Monday night, when John Gruden was doing Monday Night Football, they would clip his stuff from the Monday Night Football game, the stuff that they thought was the funniest, and they'd have a caller call in to do the John Gruden This Guy Challenge, because he always referred to everybody as this guy, so you didn't know what he was talking about or who he was talking about. They'd play the clip of John Gruden talking about somebody during the game, usually in a very sexual sounding manner, and the caller had to guess which player Gruden was talking about in each clip. It was a fun time, man. And I think they gave the caller, I think, a little something, even if they didn't win everything. I don't remember. That was one of the best ones, though. And that was a great idea. And then their other great idea was they had a guy named Adolfo who was like this obese Hispanic man-child who was like, they just like bully him basically. And he eventually left the show, but he was like their man on the street interview guy. He was hilarious as well. They'd have him go out to talk to the crowd after games, and they did a segment called Ask a Pink Hat with him, which the pink hat is like referring to these stupid young chicks that go to Red Sox games typically, because they want to go to these games during the summer and hang out in the sun and whatever and look cute and whatever. So they would typically they'd have like pink Red Sox hats and whatever, and they'd get drunk and they don't know anything about baseball. Like they just go and they don't even pay attention to the game. So the segment was Adolfo would find one of these chicks that he thinks looks really stupid, like they don't know anything about baseball. They just came out of the game, and he would ask them like really easy questions about the Red Sox that they should know. And a caller would call in for the segment, and they'd hear what the question was going to be, and they'd have to guess whether or not the chick would get the answer right or not on each question. So that was pretty awesome as well. Matt Rule is pretty bad, yeah. Gruden's emails, he should not have been fired over that. Let's just put it that way. It was mostly because of you can't insult Roger Goodell, man. That was the main thing. All right, let's finish this. I haven't even gotten to my plays yet here in college basketball. These games, I mean, a lot of the rest of these games aren't really that interesting. All right, first play up I'm going to give you is we're starting my card at 5 p.m. here, man. First one up. Jeffrey might not love what I'm doing here today because we actually have mostly favorites here, but they're small-ish favorites. We're going to lay the points with UC Davis, -3.5 against Cal State Northridge. On first look, it looks weird because UC Davis has the lesser record here at 7-5. Northridge is 8-6. So why would you want to lay points with UC Davis? Well, first of all, they're at home. Second of all, Ken Bum has them as the higher-ranked team, so you could argue that maybe this line is actually a little short. And I know the line has actually dropped a little bit, so I don't know if there's some personnel stuff going on, but we'll see what the market looks like when it shapes up. But it's dropped from 4.5 to 3.5. I just see it as value here, and I like the spot as well. We have a high total here, which does make it easier to cover, although we're not asking it makes it easier to cover as a favorite, but we're not asking the favorite to win by that much anyway. But we're going to fade Northridge here, man. And if you remember, I had my handicap on Northridge the other day when they were involved in the only Division I game that happened the other day. They went to Stanford, and they stepped up their game big, man, against Stanford, ACC team, one of the big boys in the state of California. Northridge showed up in this game, and they only lost by 8 points. They had a good game in this one, man. It was a close game. I mean, statistically, it was close. It wasn't really a misleading result or anything like that, but Northridge, they just kind of played out of their minds. They were still down 3 points with like 3 minutes left in the game. They just played their guts out. They didn't go away. They were 15 or so point dogs in that one, I think. I was correct about the cover in that one. But now they're coming off that game, and they're playing another road game here against UC Davis, who's been pretty mediocre here, and might be a bit under the radar. And up next, Cal State Northridge has to play UC Santa Barbara, which I think is a bigger game. Santa Barbara's off to a 2-0 conference start already, and Santa Barbara is always one of the better teams in this conference in the Big West. So I think this is a sandwich spot that Northridge is in, and you're actually looking at value on the number here because I think UC Davis, the number looks a little bit weird as well. So I like those misleading lines sometimes too. UC Davis is in a fine spot here because the last time they played was against Puke. Who is that? Pacific Union. Okay, I think that's a train that's a railroad line, I'm pretty sure. UC Davis beat those guys back on Sunday, which that's really just a tune-up game, I would say, coming out of the break. And I think that's good because they just get that game out of the way. They get some new momentum after Christmas. Now they can just play. They're going to be focused on this game, I think, whereas Northridge's focus, I think, could definitely be called into question. And again, sneakily, UC Davis is actually the better team. Ken Bum has them as having faced the 87th most difficult schedule, so I like that. Yes, they do play a little bit on the faster side. They're pretty balanced offense and defense, so overall they're an okay team. Ken Bum has them just kind of in the middle of the rankings, nothing horrible here. And he actually has them better than Northridge. Like I said, he has Northridge outside of the top 200, and Northridge, they're a very imbalanced team. They're actually horrible defensively, according to Ken Bum. They're 269th defensively, so very bad defense. So they could definitely allow some points here. They're 12th in tempo, so they play extremely fast. UC Davis might actually be able to slow them down from what they really want to do, and maybe that'll throw them off. And Ken Bum also has Northridge being very lucky at 48th in his luck index. So he's telling you they've overperformed so far, and they have not faced a strong schedule, 215th strength of schedule. So put all that in a blender. Yeah, I like UC Davis in that game quite a bit. We're laying it with UC Davis in that one. Again, I don't know if there's like a personnel reason why the line has dropped a little bit on Davis, but college basketball, I completely ignore it, man. I'm doing what I've succeeded at doing, so that's what I'm doing. All right. And by the way, Ken Bum, again, I always point out because I do use his site. I usually try to avoid diving into his actual projections and stuff because that's the stuff you actually have to pay for. But it is definitely worth it. You get all these projections. You get all of his advanced analytics and stuff, all the stats for I think it's around 30 a year, so it's almost nothing. You know, it's just at this point, it's really just like a few coffees a year, pretty much. All right, we got Southern Miss and UL Monroe caught my eye, where Southern Miss, they are coming off a big game against LSU, yeah, but LSU absolutely crushed them. I mean, no shocker there, really, LSU. They're an SEC team. They look like they're kind of on the way back up a little bit, even though I don't think they're as good as their record looks. But Southern Miss was not expected to win that game, obviously. Now, yes, they're stepping way down in class to face UL Monroe here, coming off an ugly loss, really. So I kind of like the Southern Miss side here. UL Monroe is actually coming off a big game where they went to Kansas State. They had a huge step-up game against Kansas State, and they came close to winning the game, and that was on Sunday, so kind of a quick turnaround time after this. UL Monroe actually gave a full effort here. They refused to go away, and they were still within 4 points really late in this game, man. So they played a good game, and then they just fell short late. So this looks like UL Monroe could be in a big flat spot after that, even though I know ideally they're going to try to get up for the Southern Miss, but I would lay the points with Southern Miss in that one, and it might look like a big line to lay with Southern Miss just because they're 7-7. The public might not look at this game at all, but they'll look at a game like this, and they probably won't want to lay like a huge amount of points with a 500 team. The line is actually dropped, by the way, from 8.5 to 6.5. I actually think there might be a pretty decent amount of value in laying the points with Southern Miss here. That is what I would do in this game. It is a fairly high total as well in the 150s, but I do have some hesitations. Southern Miss is a slow tempo team, so I don't exactly love that as far as laying points on the road. Let me see here. Southern Miss, where are you at? Ken Bum has them inside the top 200, which isn't terrible. He has them pretty balanced offensively and defensively, but below average team, let's say, in Southern Miss. But obviously UL Monroe is a terrible, terrible team. And he has Southern Miss. They're just kind of in the middle of the pack everywhere as far as strength of schedule, tempo a little bit slower. Luck index, he has them kind of middle of the pack. UL Monroe, he actually has very low in the luck index, though. So he's actually telling you Monroe has underperformed, but they are so bad, dude. He has them 350th out of 365 teams in defense, and they're not within the top 300 in offense either. So they are awful. And he does have them. The one thing they do crack the top 100 in is tempo. They play really fast, and they don't play defense. So to me, that does seem like kind of a recipe for disaster as far as not being able to cover as an underdog here. So I do like Southern Miss. I'm not quite going to get there with that one, but I do like that one to some extent. So I'm just giving you what I think are my stronger opinions here. Garrett, you're on Oregon. Alabama, you got a good number on that. And Georgia, I actually agree with you on all three of those games, even though the market seems to not really agree. Toucher and Hardy, Jeffrey, you listen. How you know them? Yeah, they're all right. I haven't really listened that much to them. They're okay. I don't know. There's something missing about the dynamic, although I haven't listened that much to them. I haven't listened to Rich's show at all, though. I don't even know where he's at. But yeah, I don't know. A cup of coffee on it, on the games, you mean? Yeah. All right. We have actually one of the best games of the day actually is probably this game here between, well, actually, there are a couple of games that are actually pretty decent here. Omaha and South Dakota State is actually probably a decent game in the Summit just because Omaha won the Summit last year, although I thought they overperformed last year. They're kind of mediocre now. They did just lose a long win streak. They couldn't handle Oregon. Oregon's been bad, but Omaha could not do anything against them on the road. Oregon didn't score that much, and they still won decisively. Now Omaha does at least get to step back down in class and face South Dakota State, although South Dakota State is usually one of the better teams in the Summit, although this year I would say it's really between St. Thomas and North Dakota State right now and not South Dakota State. South Dakota State did respectably, I would say, against Arizona on the road, losing by 28. That's respectable against Arizona, okay? Arizona is a powerhouse right now, so not a horrible looking loss for South Dakota State. Now they're coming back home, starting Summit play. I forgot to mention, yes, Summit League is starting today as well. I mean, it's a situation where I think you probably got to lean towards the better team, and I think if the public looks at this, they're going to see both teams sitting at 7 and 8 or whatever, and think that laying points to this extent looks ridiculous. South Dakota State's actually down from 9 to 7.5, but they are taking what looks like the cash percentage right now. I would slightly agree with laying it with South Dakota State here, but again, very weak opinion for me. So my stronger opinions that are not on my card right now are the two that I mentioned otherwise, Southern Miss and what was the other one again? Texas Arlington. Those are my strongest ones that are not on my card. So do what you want with all the information, obviously, as I always say. 75% of the tickets are on Omaha, by the way. Maybe the public remembers Omaha making the tournament last year, although I kind of doubt that, but maybe. South Dakota State just has more name recognition in the Summit, though, because it seems like they make the tournament almost 50% of the time out of this conference. It seems like it's always them or North Dakota State, usually. Until this year when the Tommies finally get through, man, with Tyler Hero's brother. I want to see that happen, man. My parents' house, I don't have a hot uncle. What? You mean my cousin? My cousin was not there. No, that was for Christmas. We're talking about a male cousin, yes. No, it was like pretty much the immediate family. My brother-in-law and sister, they made some chicken, some Thai chicken. We had some sweet Thai chili chicken, and we had some peanut coconut chicken. It was good. I liked it. So, yeah, that's what we were doing. Some rice, some veggies, It was a New Year's dinner, man. Never Toucher enriched me. I've met Adolfo before. I didn't get on the show through Adolfo, though. Like, he didn't, because I'm not a dumb pink cat, so he didn't interview me. Although he could have interviewed me for one of the Drunken recaps, though. Although I never got on it for that. But that's another thing that he would do. One of their segments on the show was Adolfo would find like the rowdiest, drunkest people coming out of like a Bruins game, Celtics game, Red Sox game, whatever. Patriots as well, I think they did. Although that was more of a chore for him to have to go out to Foxborough. But usually it was the Boston teams, and he'd try to find drunk, crazy dudes coming out of the game and interview them for the Drunken recap. I don't think they turned it into like a call-in, like game segment or anything like that, but I think they just played it just because it was hilarious. I forget. Yeah, I don't think they came up with a game for it. Maybe they did, and I don't remember. But yeah, the Drunken recaps, I think it was more just like they wanted to hear like basically the concept was Adolfo would ask the drunk guy to recap the game for him and tell him what happened. And it was always absolutely ridiculous. And like some of it was wrong. Like he somehow had a knack for finding like the drunkest guys possible, especially after Bruins games. Bradley at Belmont is the game I was going to talk about. Man, we're getting into the night slate here. This is one of the better games. This arguably might be the best game on the college basketball board today. Remember, we have all these small conferences playing today. I think this is potentially the two best teams in this conference, although I know Illinois State is definitely in the mix there as well. This is an interesting one, man. Bradley, they're coming off that close call-ish against Evansville, which was not a good performance from Bradley, so I expect them to be much more focused in this one and bounce back off of that. But you want to talk about focus. Belmont is actually coming off an outright loss to Indiana State in overtime. So even though it did go into overtime and it was back on Monday, I think it's a bounce back spot for them as well. So I think this might be a situation where the better team wins out here. And Belmont is the better team right now, although the money is kind of disagreeing and coming in on the Bradley side. Belmont has dropped from 5.5 to 4.5 here. I kind of disagree. I kind of lean towards Belmont here because I think their performance is just uglier in that prior game, although Evansville is a worse opponent than Indiana State. So Bradley not doing well against Evansville, you could argue that was actually the worst of the two performances, but they won the game. 60% of the tickets, 85% of the cash are on Bradley. To me, I think because Bradley's been one of the teams right there in the mix in the Missouri Valley for the last few years, and Belmont used to be pretty dominant when they were in like the A-Sun. They were dominant in that conference. They were dominant in the Ohio Valley for a little bit, I think. Now they're in this conference, and since they moved to this conference, I think they haven't really done a whole lot of anything. So I think people have kind of forgotten about Belmont, and I kind of think they're under the radar right now. I think Belmont is the best team in that conference, so for now at least. But again, we'll see what happens in that game. Speaking of Indiana State, they could be in a letdown spot because they pulled off that upset. It was a home win, huge win for Indiana State against Belmont. But the question is, are they going to overlook Northern Iowa? And I kind of doubt it because Northern Iowa, I should have mentioned them too. They're in the mix here, man. And so is Murray State, to be honest. Like I said, this Missouri Valley is actually a deep conference this year. The conference tournament is going to be awesome, I think, in this conference this year. Like the last couple of years, it was really just kind of Drake, Bradley, and that was in Indiana State when they had Robbie Avila there and not much else going on here. But this year, it looks like there are like 6 teams that could legitimately win this conference, and you could argue legitimately like belong in the tournament. There is the possibility the Missouri Valley actually gets 2 bids into the tournament this year, which would be insane, but there might be a possibility of that this year. Now, Indiana State, I just don't know if they're going to overlook Northern Iowa, man. It's a difficult spot to come off of this huge overtime win against Belmont, and you see they did not bounce back well after they had a similar game where they lost in triple overtime to Bradley. They just, I think, had nothing left, and they got smoked by Illinois State, who's, again, one of the better teams in this conference. Indiana State just couldn't keep it up 2 games in a row. They had erectile dysfunction. Maybe they will again here. They do have Drake up next, but again, I don't think they're going to overlook Northern Iowa. So the question is, are they going to have enough left in the tank to be able to cover this? And they're going to be sizable underdogs here, so maybe they will. For Northern Iowa, Northern Iowa is coming off that game where it was a pretty ugly game against Valpo. They won 58-48. So if the public looks at this, they're really not going to like that. Like, they're not going to think Northern Iowa looks very good beating Valpo in this ugly, low-scoring game like that. Northern Iowa, though, you could kind of excuse them not playing that well because they came off a huge game against St. Mary's the game before that where they only lost by 5 on the road. That was a pretty good result for Northern Iowa there. So if I was going to play this game, I would have to lay the points with Northern Iowa here. But Northern Iowa, they play real slow, ugly basketball, so I do worry about laying points with them. They've already dropped from 11 to 9 here on the line. Total is low, 134.5, although it's gone up a little bit. 83% of tickets, 98% of the cash on Northern Iowa. But if the total is going to be higher, that actually kind of indicates against Northern Iowa because they play really slow. They want to slow this thing down. So I worry about laying close to double digits with the style of game that this might turn out to be. But if I was going to play it, I would have to lay it with Northern Iowa, but I have some concerns about it. All right, next up, next play. This is the one dog I have on the board today. We're going to be on UC-Riverside plus the points. As long as you can get at least 7.5 on this, it's dropped a little bit. I think it was 9, 8, somewhere in that range for a little bit, but 7 is the key number in basketball-ish, if you will, if there is a key number, because teams stop intentionally fouling once they fall behind by more than 6. Although, again, we've seen teams foul at 6 and then they lose by 8, which isn't great. But in this game, this is the game I was talking about where it could be rust. Actually, I think you're going to get better value on this right now. You're probably going to get 8, 8.5 right now. We're fading Hawaii in this one. Hawaii's down from 9.5 to 8 here. We don't really see the percentages yet. But Hawaii, this is the team I was talking about that could be rusty. Hawaii looks really good right now, right? Because they're off to a 10-2 start. Okay, cool. But who have they played? They played 2 power conference teams, and yeah, they only lost to Oregon by 1. That's a pretty good result on the road. They only lost by 7 to Arizona State, but for power conference teams, neither of those teams are really that good. And other than that, Hawaii has faced a very weak schedule. So I'm not impressed by Hawaii's schedule here. And if you look at what Ken Bum says about it, they've faced the second easiest schedule in all of Division I at 364th strength of schedule. That is really bad. So Hawaii is very unbattle tested, and they're also a really imbalanced team. Looking at Ken Bum's rankings, they're actually in the top 25 in defense, but their offense is outside of the top 200. So that does not profile as a team that you want to lay points with, man, where they can't score. They do focus on defense, but you're asking them to lay a bunch of points on the road. I don't like that. Surprisingly, he doesn't have them that high in his luck index, though. Because they're at 10-2. Well, they're 10-2. You'd think they've overperformed a little bit. But I think just because their schedule's been so weak, they haven't really overperformed. But I still think they're totally unbattle tested here. And I know Riverside is also a weak opponent. I get it. They're the lesser of these two teams, but we're going to look at the situation as well in a minute. Hawaii does play a little bit fast at 110th in tempo, so they do try to speed it up, but Riverside might be able to counter that a little bit because they do play a mid-tempo style, a little bit slower. So maybe Riverside will be able to slow this thing down a little bit. And yeah, I know Riverside is high in the luck index in the top 100. I don't love that, but they're also 74th in strength of schedule. So Riverside is the more battle-tested team. They're not going to be intimidated facing Hawaii, which they play every year. And yes, I know Riverside also is horrible on the defensive side. So we're looking at the much worse defense on the Riverside side. But again, with Hawaii, with their offense being so bad, their offense is actually worse than Riverside's. Again, that's not really a profile where you want to lay points on the road with a team like that. And then we got to look at the schedule, and you want to talk about rust. You want to know when the last time Hawaii played a game was? December 13th. So they've been off for almost a month. I think they've been off for longer than every other team. So I think you could see a lot of rust here that Hawaii has to shake, and a lot of times that does affect the offensive side of things. You're looking at an offense that's already not good. Now, they're traveling to the mainland, which is also not great. Although they have a lot of time off, so that might help their travel a little bit, that they have more time to do it. But having this time off is going to disrupt their momentum, in my opinion, as well, because they've won 6 games in a row, even though their last game was a pretty unimpressive home win against UTEP, where they probably should have won by more. Hawaii was probably favored by more than 5 in that game. But even so, having 6 wins in a row, going into a break, that's not good. Now they're coming to the mainland, and they have 2 games in 3 days. One is against UC-Riverside, and one is against UC San Diego, who's still probably the best team in this conference and won the conference last year. So which one of these teams do you think Hawaii is going to have more focus on if they focus on one of the games? I think we know the answer to that. I think it's going to be UC San Diego. So I think this is a look ahead. I think you could argue it's a sandwich spot just because of the long layoff here, if you want to call it that. It is a weird spot for Hawaii. And they come back home after that, and they get UC-Irvine as well, who's been a staple in this conference for a long time as well. So I do not like the spot here for Hawaii. UC-Riverside, I think they can compete, man, and they actually have not played since before Christmas, although last time they played was December 23rd, so they're on kind of a more regular schedule where they played at least 9 9 days ago, whatever that is. So that's okay. And they played UCLA. I know that was a big game for UC-Riverside, but they were not close. They lost by 32 points. So coming off a 30-plus point loss to anybody, I think you're going to be focused. And this is the only thing Riverside has to focus on. So they have some rest here, which I think is actually good because it'll disrupt their losing momentum. They lost 2 games in a row coming into the break here. So I think that's helpful. And they don't play again until next Thursday. And it's against Cal State Bakersfield. So it's not really a look ahead. So really all they have right here is to focus on Hawaii, who's off to a 10-2 overall start. So I see Riverside getting up for this game. Riverside, as I said, they faced a more difficult schedule. They have losses at New Mexico, at Cal Baptist. They're not a bad team either. At UC Irvine. Irvine's pretty good in this conference. At BYU, at UCLA, at the Tommies, St. Thomas. They're not bad either. So Riverside is clearly, they face a more difficult schedule. They're clearly the more battle-tested team. So we're going to take Riverside in that one plus the points. Yeah, that's one of the longest breaks that you'll see in college basketball. And it probably has to do with just the fact that Hawaii is all the way out there in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. They probably get more of a break there just because it's a benefit to them, or so they think. But I think in this case, it's actually a negative because I think it's a momentum stopper. Okay. As far as the rest of these games are concerned, I do have one more play. Yeah, let's get to it, and then I'll get to the rest of the sports here. An hour on just college basketball. Oh, at least there's not a lot of the rest of the sports today. We'll get this done in less than an hour, I think, now. The other best bet is another favorite. We got Montana State minus 2.5 against Northern Colorado. Our friends, Northern Colorado, they've been very friendly to me this year, but we're going to fade them in this spot. I think we did fade them before, right, with Denver. So we've gone against them before. We've been on them before. They covered for us against Texas Tech. So they've been good to us, Northern Colorado, and hopefully that continues by them not playing well in this game against Montana State. You might have to lay 3 here. It's somewhere between 2.5 and 3. But the money looks like it agrees with me on this one at 55% of the cash on Montana State. 67% of tickets on Northern Colorado. Now, I'm not going to disagree that Northern Colorado is the best team in this conference in the Big Sky. I think they are. But I think Montana State's not that much worse. And the odds makers are telling you that it's pretty close, with Montana State being close to getting more than home court advantage here. I think probably they get about 3 for home court. So the odds makers are almost telling you these teams are almost even. And I like the spot, man. Northern Colorado, as I said, we've been able to handicap them pretty well on the show here, where we had them covering against Texas Tech. They caught Texas Tech in what was a bad spot for Texas Tech. They covered that game. It was a good game for Northern Colorado, losing only by 11. Then they had a bad game in the next game because it was a letdown spot after being pretty close with Texas Tech. They lost outright to in-state little brother Denver, so we got that one right as well. Those were both plays I gave out on the show. Now, after that, I did not play Northern Colorado in the bounce back, although they were in a bounce back spot after that against in-state big brother Colorado. So you know they were going to get up for this game against Colorado, which was on Sunday. And maybe I should have given that out as a play because they were coming out of the break. The break probably helped end their losing momentum there. They were coming off that bad loss going into the break. Very explainable loss. So Colorado must have been in a bad spot or something as well for me to not have played Northern Colorado in that game. But what did Northern Colorado do? Yeah, they pulled off the upset against Colorado on the road. Now, Colorado's not that good this year, but they're still the University of Colorado, man, and they're still a Big 12 team. Or they're a Big 12 team again, I should say. Huge win for Northern Colorado there, man. And now coming off of that, I just don't know what focus they're going to have here, even though Montana State did have a nice run in the Big 12, where I think they won the Big 12 2 or 3 years in a row not that long ago. But it's kind of been Montana more recently. Montana, I think, has won it a couple of years in a row. Montana won it last year. So Northern Colorado might actually even look ahead to Montana here just because Montana is the defending conference champs here. So I think Northern Colorado's in a letdown spot. They're having to go on the road again here, and I think they might overlook a 6-7 Montana State team, but Montana State, I think, is better than what they look like. The public might come in and look at this game. If they see it, they're going to see, oh, Montana Montana State lost at Colorado. That was actually a pretty good performance from Montana State, only losing by 6. But people might see that, oh, Montana State lost at Colorado and Northern Colorado beat them. And now you're giving me 3 with Northern Colorado. It almost looks too easy, right, to play Northern Colorado. Like, why is a 10-3 team getting points from a 6-7 team? Well, again, there are reasons for it. Montana State has faced a fairly difficult schedule. They have losses to Stanford on the road, Boise on the road, Utah State on the road. And by the way, every one of those games was a single-digit loss. So Montana State was in every one of those games, even though those games were difficult. And yes, they also lost at home to Denver, by the way. Both of these teams did. So they might have been looking ahead to Stanford. I don't know what that was really. And then, yeah, Montana State has a couple other losses on the road. They lost to Oregon State, Oral Roberts, who's not that great. Or Oregon State, I mean, they're still a big name. So whatever. And Montana State, they have a pretty strong resume. Let's just put it that way. They're battle-tested, and they really haven't looked bad this year. And I think the spot sets up a lot better for them, too, because they're coming off an easy tune-up win coming out of the break. Or actually, no, they haven't played since the break. My mistake. They beat Northwest, not Northwestern, Northwest, who I think is actually in the Northwest of the United States, as opposed to Northwestern, who's in where the Northwest Territory used to be or whatever, in the Chicago area. But yeah, Montana State actually hasn't played since the break. So yeah, you could argue that their momentum is going to be stopped here by the fact that they went to the break on 2 straight wins. But I'm not going to make that argument here. I think they're absolutely going to show up for their conference opener against the best team in the conference at home. They're going to show up for this game, and I think it's a major letdown for Northern Colorado, and maybe even debatably a sandwich. So we're going with Montana State in this one, man. We're laying the small price there. If it dips below 2.5, I would say you could look towards the money line. I mean, you could anyway, but you probably have to lay about minus 150 on the money line right now, so it's a little bit steep, but I don't disagree with the money line either, obviously. All right, let's go to hockey. Hockey, I mean, there's a decent board. Hey, my Boston Bruins crushed Edmonton yesterday. Finally a win for the Bruins. Break that losing momentum, baby. We have a couple afternoon hockey games today. The first game up is Washington at Ottawa. Now, this is, I think, one of the stronger opinions of mine of the hockey slate here, even though I don't love it. But I think Washington's kind of in a bad spot here, man. They're playing a back-to-back with travel because they were at home yesterday, and they decisively beat the Rangers 6-3, and now they're traveling up to Ottawa on a back-to-back. Not only that, but they're playing a third game in 4 days and a fourth game in 6 days, all in different cities. And the travel was kind of bizarre, where they played in New Jersey into overtime. They went down to Florida. Then they came back up to Washington, and now they're going up to Ottawa. I don't love it, man. It's just a lot of travel in quick succession, a lot of games in quick succession. And Ottawa, the spot, I think, sets up much better for them because they haven't played since Monday, and they're on a 3-game losing streak, culminating in losing horribly to Columbus 4-1 at home. So staying at home here, I think you're definitely going to get a focus at Ottawa team here. Now, I don't know what's going on with Ullmark because he's missed the last 2 games. He is obviously their best goaltender, so he had a leave of absence for personal reasons, so I don't know, it might have been bereavement or something like that, so I expect he's probably going to be back in this game because they've had a pretty long layoff here, which I also think is going to disrupt their losing momentum, so obviously I like Ottawa in this game. I think it's one of the stronger hockey opinions of the day here. It's not on my card, but I would play Ottawa if I was going to play this. They're up from minus 135 to minus 142 on the money line. 55% of the tickets and 77% of the cash on them. You like the Stars again? I probably agree, but it's dicey, man. I like Ottawa better than maybe all the rest of this board, man. I like Ottawa quite a bit here. I think if I was going to play any hockey game, that's what it would be. Ottawa on the money line, or they have to lay a little bit of a price for it. But anything below 150, minus 150, I think is all right. Otherwise, you could split the bet. Puck line, money line if you want to. Utah is at the New York Islanders here. I think Utah's in a positive spot. They haven't played since Monday either. They're on a 2-game losing streak. They lost at home to Nashville in their last game, but it was a weird spot. Utah had played Colorado going into the break pretty close. Then they just had a single home game before going out on the road. I don't know. Bad game, but when a team has a bad game like that at home, they have time off and they're starting a road trip. I think it's a very positive situation because you get to try to bust out of that losing momentum, stop that momentum by having rest, focus on hockey. And usually teams are going to be focused to start a road trip. So I like this. This is another afternoon game, by the way, 3 p.m. So obviously I like Utah in this game. Although I guess that wasn't too obvious if the Islanders are also in a positive spot, but I don't think they really are. They're returning home from a road trip where it was only a 2-game road trip, though. They lost to Columbus and then beat Chicago in a shootout, which I know it's not that impressive, but now they're back home to face Utah. I know it's only a 2-game road trip return, which usually I like to fade teams when they've been on the road for a long time because they can get distracted back at home. But in this case, I just don't know how much focus they're going to have against a middling Utah team. And the Islanders play Eastern Conference foes the next 2 games, Toronto and New Jersey. So I don't know. I just don't know what their focus is going to be. I think you're definitely going to get focus from Utah. So that's the way I would lean. The money agrees with that as well. Islanders are down from -120 to -107. 56% of the tickets and 87% of the cash on the Mammoth. So yeah, I lean to Utah there. Stamkos did get the number 600. Good for him, man. I still think that even though he did get it, I still think playing that prop, you weren't like getting great value on it. Winnipeg at Toronto. This is a game, man. I mean, both these teams probably should be better than what their records look like right now. Of course, with Winnipeg, they were without Hellebuyck for a while, but they've lost a lot of games since he's come back, man. He's played every one of those games since he came back. At some point, they're going to give him rest, though, and it's probably going to be today because they're on a back-to-back with travel, although it's just from Detroit to Toronto. Not a huge travel spot, but they're playing a third game in 4 days now, all in different cities. Fourth game in 6 days, with the first 2 being at home. Close game yesterday against Detroit. I don't love the spot for Winnipeg, man. Even though they've lost all these games. I mean, these have been kind of difficult games. Toronto, they're coming into this game with 1 day off, although they did smoke New Jersey 4-0 in their last game, so they might be feeling a little bit high on themselves. They also lost to Detroit the game before that, so both teams have a similar loss at Detroit over the last couple of games. So nothing to really see there with the common opponent. You could argue Toronto's in a letdown spot, though, coming off beating New Jersey handily 4-0. They might be feeling high off of themselves. And then they get New York, the Islanders, and then Florida, and then Philadelphia. I think all of those are bigger games for them than Winnipeg is. So I don't love the spot for them. I would say that you're probably going to get more focus out of Winnipeg in this game. The problem is they've just played a lot of games in quick succession. So the rest factor is really what the detriment is to Winnipeg here. The money is agreeing with Winnipeg on this one, though. Or the money is siding with Winnipeg. Toronto's down from -145 to -133. 57% of tickets on Toronto, 88% of the cash on Winnipeg. I'll agree with Winnipeg in it, even though they're on the back-to-back. You're going to get, I'm assuming they're going to play Comrie in this one, so you'll get the rested goaltender. I mean, having Hellebuyck in there hasn't really helped, so hasn't really help-a-bucked them. But yes, even though, you have Winnipeg in an iffy rest spot, Toronto, I mean, they really could just completely overlook this game, and they're the favorite in this one, so that's what I worry about. Yeah, I mean, I'll agree with the market in that one with Winnipeg. The Royals, what's up, Zach? Jeffrey, you like Toronto? Yeah, I don't know. I disagree with it. The market seems to be speaking pretty loudly on that game as well, for what that's worth, which I think that is worth something when it's a huge division where the ticket percentage and cash percentage are completely on opposite sides. Although, again, it is early in the day on a hockey board, though, so you do have to take that into account. Detroit at Pittsburgh. Everybody's kind of saying Pittsburgh is back all of a sudden, man, and I might want to fade that sentiment. The public is talking about Pittsburgh right now. Detroit, they're actually playing pretty well right now. They won 5 of 6. I think they're kind of under the radar, but they are in a back-to-back right now. They did beat Winnipeg yesterday. They're having to travel for this single game to Pittsburgh, which is a little bit weird, although Detroit to Pittsburgh is not a huge travel leg here. Maybe they will show up. They'll probably have Talbot back in net for this, which I think is fine. I mean, they alternate between him and Gibson, and there's not really a huge drop-off, I don't think, between their two goalies. Now, for Pittsburgh, I think they're definitely in a letdown spot, although they do have a little bit of rest because they didn't play yesterday. But they just beat Carolina 5-1 off of beating Chicago 7-3, which that's less impressive. That was a play for us on the show, by the way, against Chicago. We played Pittsburgh in that one. Chicago was in an awful spot off the upset of Dallas. Pittsburgh, so that means over their last two games, they've won by a combined 12-4 score. And 2 days ago when they played that game against Carolina, dude, I mean, I don't see how this couldn't be a letdown spot after smashing Carolina 5-1. Now they get Detroit. You know, I know it is Detroit. They've been okay this year. They're actually playing a home and home against Detroit because they play in Detroit on Saturday. But even though Detroit's on the back-to-back, I think I have to lean that way. I just think this is a massive letdown spot for Pittsburgh, although the money's disagreeing on that one. Money is on Pittsburgh. They're down from -130 to -128. But again, everybody's talking about Pittsburgh right now and saying, oh, hey, Pittsburgh is actually really good. I still am not sure about that. I think they caught Carolina in a decent spot to catch them as well. I think we leaned to Pittsburgh in that game on the show. Wasn't a strong opinion for me, though. Detroit, 60% of the tickets on Detroit, 61% of the cash on Pittsburgh. Again, yeah, just throwing all the information out there. The LA Kings, you mean? Yeah, I mean, I kind of avoid the Kings at home usually, but I'm going to look at that game. And I mean, I've already looked at it, but I already forget what I thought about it. Montreal at Carolina is one of the better games on the slate today. As far as, if you're a hockey fan, you'll probably like this game. Montreal, they're coming off a pretty big game as well, man. They beat Florida in overtime, and that means that over the last couple of days, since Sunday, they've played 2 overtime games, losing at Tampa Bay and winning in Florida. So that could take a lot out of them, man. I expect they will show up for a game against Carolina, but there might not be much left in the tank for Montreal here, man, and that's kind of the problem. They might just run out of gas, whereas you're getting a really good Carolina team, and I think you're going to be getting them in an angry mood after that just really weird loss to Pittsburgh. Anderson was in net for that one. He really hasn't been good recently. I don't know what's going on, man. He looks old. They've lost the last 3 games he's been in net. They've lost all of them. Actually, they've lost a lot. They've lost 8 games in a row that he's been in net, man. In the last 3, they've allowed 5 goals in the last 3 of them. Anderson is just not cutting it anymore. So the fact that he's probably not going to be in net here, and it's probably going to be Bussy, I would guess. Maybe Kochetkov, but they've both been better than Anderson. So I think if you're going to play this game, it has to be Carolina, coming off that horrific loss to Pittsburgh. Carolina is still one of the best teams in hockey. The money disagrees on this one too, but I don't see it. I think it's Carolina or a pass in this one, although you got to lay a little bit of a price for it. They're down from -190 to -185. 60% of tickets on them, 69% of the cash on Montreal. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about that game, but I would probably do a split puck line bet on that one with Carolina if I was going to play it. Tampa Bay at the LA Kings. Jeffrey kind of likes the Kings in this one, I think. Tampa Bay, they're coming off 2 straight overtime games against Montreal. They won both, too, at home against Montreal and then yesterday against Anaheim. So they're on a back-to-back, although they had a couple of days off before yesterday. I don't know that they're really going to overlook the Kings. The Kings did just beat them at home on Thursday, December 18th. And I talk about how I don't think you should overrate revenge, but when it's a game that just happened not that long ago and it's kind of a quick road reversal angle like this where the team that lost has the chance to not only avenge that, but really it's about making adjustments off of that. I'm not quite sure that I want to fade Tampa here, although you're not going to have Vasilevsky in net here most likely because he played yesterday. So it's probably going to be Johansson, although he's been okay. Not as good as Vasilevsky, though. And Tampa Bay is coming off that big win over Anaheim yesterday, and they're on the back-to-back, so I worry a little bit about that. LA hasn't played since Monday, December 29th, and they lost at Colorado. Big game, but they lost decisively. They have way more rest, and they're back at home here. So I do think the spot does still set up better for the Kings here. I'll slightly agree with the Kings here, but the money is disagreeing with it. I don't have a strong opinion on it. The Kings are also bad at home, as I keep pointing out, so that's a little bit worrisome. Although the spot to me does set up better for them, but they were 5-8-4 at home, which is horrendous. And Tampa Bay is excellent on the road, 12-4-3 on the road. So the home road splits in this game don't look good for the Kings at all. 65% of the tickets, 84% of the cash on the Tampa Bay side, on the Lightning. I still agree with the Kings slightly in that one, but I don't love it by any means. So that's my opinion on that one. You dropped a bomb on a High Point. Did they win? I don't know. You Israel'd High Point yesterday. Did you have Dave Draymond from Disturbed sign the bomb for you? Go check out my ukulele cover of Down with the Sickness, by the way, which I made fun of Dave in it, and it was in honor of Dave blocking me on Twitter for calling out his Zionism. All right, we have the Dallas Stars at the Chicago Blackhawks. The Stars were on a back-to-back, but they were horrible yesterday against Buffalo, losing 4-1. And, of course, the game before that, we all know, they lost to Chicago. But I think the back-to-back is a little bit mitigated here because Dallas hadn't played prior to that since Saturday, since that bad home loss to Chicago. So I think Dallas is going to make the adjustments here, man. They're the better team. They're going to be a favorite on the road, though, so you're going to have to lay a price. But I think they are going to be focused on this game because it just happened. And they used DeSmith in the game yesterday. He's their second-string goalie. So Ottinger is going to be in net here today, and he's their better goalie. So that tells me they are kind of focusing on this game more than yesterday's game. For Chicago played on Tuesday, and they lost in a shootout to the Islanders. Sure, they're going to show up for a game against Dallas at home. That's always big. They're not going to overlook Dallas. They do have Washington and Vegas coming up after this, which are also big games. But Chicago, I believe, they're still a West Conference team, right? So this game probably means more than the Washington game. Overall, I think the lean is Dallas in this one, but it's not strong for me. Dallas is a public side, though. They're down from minus 185 to minus 180 on the money line. If you play them, I think it's a split bet scenario, in my opinion, and make your own -1 puck line on this and just hope that they win the game and at least push it for you. Though hoping for a push is not great. You want to win the game, so you want to do that in a game where you think the team has a decent shot to win by multiple goals. But asking for a multiple goal win in hockey is a little bit of an ask, especially on the road. 79% of tickets and cash on Dallas. They're public. Dallas also plays low-scoring games, believe it or not, although that hasn't really been the case recently, but they tend to play more lower-scoring games than not. So a little bit more of an ask there to ask them to win like that, but we'll see what happens. And then Nashville at Seattle. Nashville's in a pretty bad spot here, in my opinion. They just beat Vegas yesterday, so they're on a back-to-back with no time off. They're playing a third game in 4 days, fourth game in 6 days, all in different cities, which is pretty ugly, pretty difficult to do. They beat Utah in elevation, then they beat Vegas. I think they might have a game where they just run out of steam here, man. They only play Calgary next, so it's not really a sandwich spot, but this is a pretty bad spot for Nashville. Seattle's coming into this game, I believe, also on a back-to-back. No, they're not. Wait a minute. My mistake. Seattle actually lost a win streak, losing to Vancouver, which I think we might have had Vancouver in that game, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe I am mistaken. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I don't know. We had a game with Vancouver recently, though, I think. Whatever it was. Seattle lost that game in a shootout that busted up their winning streak. A lot of times when a team loses a winning streak, they'll have a hangover into the next game. But in this game, I don't know, man. They do face Vancouver tomorrow, though, which worries me a little bit that there's a little bit of a quick revenge look ahead here maybe for Seattle. But I think the fact that they had multiple days off and haven't played since Monday, I think it kind of helped them refocus on hockey and maybe, I don't know, man, because again, they weren't on a losing streak, though, so I worry because when you're on a losing streak, the rest really helps bust that thing up. When you had your win streak dashed in the last game, I worry about that a little bit more. So I like Seattle in the game generally, but I'm not going to play the game. Nashville's up from -110 to -111. The money is actually on Nashville, but I like Seattle in this game. You're fading the public if you like Seattle as well. There's no way that you can play Nashville as a road favorite after beating Vegas. No, fuck that. Nashville, 76% of tickets, 95% of the cash on them. I would not do it. Jeffrey, your falling into recency bias here, man. Nashville is not as good as they look recently. Even if maybe they're not as bad as they looked earlier in the season, they're not this good either. So, yeah, the odds makers are telling you they're better than Seattle. Fine. Seattle is ass, but I would not play Nashville as a road favorite in that spot. No way. Especially when they've been hot and people are kind of onto it now. I don't know. Zach, you can go check out Covered in Uke on YouTube. It's up there. It's on my Twitter as well. Dude, I've done some weird stuff. I've done Metallica, Saint Anger. Not one of the Metallica songs that you would think would translate better, like Until It Sleeps or Nothing Else Matters or something like that. I could probably do those, but I don't know. Until It Sleeps has some weird chords in it, though. And then, Down with the Sickness I've done Break Stuff, Limp Bizkit, but I did K-Flay's cover of it, which is more... It was easier to translate to ukulele, let's put it that way. It's a softer Break Stuff. And then I've done, what else? I've done some Slipknot, although I did Vermilion Part 2, which is a song that obviously translates to you, because it's an acoustic song that doesn't sound like Slipknot. Sounds more like Stone Sour, which I've done Stone Sour before as well. Bother works out pretty well. And then, I don't know, there's one other... There are a couple of just... I did... Of course, I fairly famously did Freak on a Leash. So that one is out there somewhere as well. Korn. I've done that. And I did Korn Thoughtless as well. Freak on a Leash is the more famous song, though. So people tend to be into that one more. I tried to do the Jonathan Davis vocal breakdown. Leave me alone. All right, we have NBA. We have a little bit of NBA. I don't love this NBA board at all. And again, if I was going to play a hockey game, I think Ottawa is the best hockey side of the day, but I'm leaving it alone. I'm leaving NBA alone as well. NBA is all evening games. One early-ish evening game at 6 p.m. between Houston and Brooklyn. Great game here. Houston is coming into this game off of beating Indiana by 7. It was kind of an iffy spot for Houston coming up beating the Lakers and then Cleveland. But now they're playing Brooklyn. I mean, I don't really see them putting much focus into this game. Houston does play Dallas next, which is at least a Texas rivalry. So debatably, that's a look ahead just because this Brooklyn game is probably totally meaningless. Brooklyn is staying at home, and they haven't played since Monday. They took a loss to Golden State on Monday. I don't know where Saab is. I mean, I could whisper this game if you want, but if you want to try to play every Nets game, you're probably going to wind up in the poorhouse, though. Again, like, I try to pick the spots. Like, it doesn't matter what team it is. I'm looking at the spots here, man. But I would expect Brooklyn to play better than they did in that last game. And I think it's a spot where I don't really see why Houston would really show up with a lot of focus in this game. Brooklyn, coming off that ugly loss, is staying at home with extra time off to break that losing momentum, whatever. You got to probably take the points with the Nets or leave the game alone. It's a pretty low total by NBA standards as well at 218.5, so makes it a little bit more tempting to take points. Double-digit spread here. Rockets are up to 11.5, maybe 12. 64% of the tickets on the Rockets, 52% of the cash on the Nets, so there is that ticket versus cash dichotomy in that game. The cash split is indicating on the Nets. I don't disagree with that. Jeffrey likes, thank you, Hindian. What's up, man? Thanks for checking out the show. Even though you're a Hindu Indian, you still like me? What? Jeffrey likes the Kings and the Jazz. All right. I'm not, man, I don't know. I'm not so sure. Kings, yeah, I probably agree with the Kings, but I don't love it. Miami at the Pistons here. Miami, they're coming off smashing Denver, and that was the game where Jokic got hurt, of course. So I'm thinking, oh, by the way, what did Denver do yesterday? I want to see how. Oh, yeah, so I was right. Yeah, Denver, they won in the injured player theory spot, man. That's a strong angle. Didn't give it out as a play, but I was correct with that lean yesterday. Denver outright win. Toronto, they're not very good at home, man, and Denver's good on the road. But anyway, Miami, huge win over Denver, dude. Denver's been a team that's kind of had Miami's number over the recent years, too. Miami slaughtered them, 147 to 123, so you got to think they're feeling high on themselves. It's a weird travel spot, a single game road trip to Detroit, but the problem is, are they really going to overlook Detroit? Probably not. And they've been off since Monday, although I think that's kind of a negative that can kind of hurt their momentum because they've won 3 games in a row. So there are definitely some negatives to the spot for Miami here, which is why I don't love this, because when you first look at this, you think that this has to be a fade of the Pistons here because they're returning home from a road trip, and it's not as long as it looked like, though, because, of course, the Christmas break came in the middle of these road games here, so they actually are only returning from a 3-game road trip where they went to Utah and then 2 games in LA, so it's not as much of a road trip return spot. Still, they've been off since last Friday, so they've been off for almost a week. They're still returning home from a road trip, which could still be a bit of a distracted spot, and they finished the road trip by beating the Lakers, which is a huge win. I talked about that game on Tuesday. I got it correct. I leaned Pistons in that game. We got it right. I mean, they were coming off a hideous loss to the Clippers in the game before that. I think Detroit just had all their focus on LA, man. But we know LA is also short on the Lakers, excuse me. I got to stop calling every LA team just LA when there's more than one. And I think it's hilarious, by the way, that on ESPN here, they have the Clippers listed as just LA, and they have the Lakers listed as Los Angeles, whatever. But that was a huge win for Detroit, man. And I think they had all their focus on the Lakers. We know the Lakers are without Reeves and I think Hachimura right now, though. Huge win for the Pistons, though, which I believe was also, I think that was on LeBron's 41st birthday, too. So kind of an interesting series, like, I don't know, an interesting event how it lined up there. But Detroit won the game. They could be in a letdown spot here, and they do play Cleveland next, and it's possible they put more stock into that game, and then they play the Knicks the day after that. So they might consider both of those games to be bigger than this Miami game, because Miami's been kind of a middling team. So I actually think Miami is actually the lean in this game, believe it or not, even though they're coming off that huge win over Denver. I think the Pistons spot is actually worse. The money actually agrees with it. The Pistons down from 6 to 5 here. 59% of the tickets on Detroit, but 64% of the cash on the Heat. So the money is saying the Heat. I don't disagree, but it's a tough one to make a call on, man, where the Heat are also kind of in a bad spot. So I don't love it. Thank you, sir. Hindian, I appreciate it, man. I'm trying to see what your what is your avatar there, man? Does that say Kings of Comedy? What is that? I don't know. I'll have to look at your profile after this on Twitter, man. Thanks for checking out the show. All right, we got Philadelphia, Jeffrey's team there, the 76ers at Dallas here. This is also kind of a quick rematch scenario. Philadelphia beat Dallas in Philly back on December 20th for what it's worth. I don't know how much that's really worth, but it could mean that maybe Dallas will make some adjustments here. Now, the spot for Philly isn't really great, as they're playing a second game in 3 days, and they just won in overtime at Memphis. So they pulled off a mild upset there, I believe, on the road against Memphis. I think was Zach Edey still out in that game? I'm not sure, because Embiid kind of had his way in that game and had a double-double in that game. Philadelphia got the win. It was an overtime upset win. Don't really know if they're going to put a whole lot of stock into this Dallas game, who they already beat, as I said, not that long ago. So another reason why that zigzag angle kind of works is that the team that won might just overlook the team the next time, and that might be the case here, because Philly does play the Knicks next in a couple of days. That's a huge game. And then Denver after that, which I know it's going to be Denver without Jokic now, but the Knicks are a huge game, even though they did beat the Knicks recently as well. But that is just a much bigger game. It's an Eastern Conference game. So I could see Philly overlooking Dallas here. Now for Dallas, I think the spot does set up a little bit better for them, but they're returning home from a road trip, and you know I warn against playing on teams that return home from road trips. Very rarely that I'm going to be on a team, like actually on my card, that returns home from a road trip. Their road trip also started on Christmas, so kind of a weird scenario where it's like, well, when did they celebrate Christmas? Was it before the road trip or after? I don't know, because before the road trip, they were also away, and they were only home on the 23rd, and they had to play against Denver, and they actually somehow won that game, even though it looked like it was going to be a distracted spot. And they went back out on the road. They lost all 3 games on the road, had that big game on Christmas that they lost. Then I think they were kind of just hung over in the next game against Sacramento. And then I actually gave out Dallas as a play in the next game against Portland, and they pushed on the +3. They weren't exactly great in the game against Portland. So, I mean, it kind of looks like maybe they would bounce back in a spot like this. But again, you got to worry about it a little bit when it's a team returning home from a road trip. They've been away for a week. They have to get back to home life. They might actually use this time to celebrate Christmas, because I'm guessing they probably didn't do it before they went out for the break, and they were probably doing it here because they've been off since Monday. Now, the fact that they've been off since Monday might help as well, because it'll break their losing momentum. But they also have Houston next, which could be a bit of a look-ahead spot. But then again, they also might make adjustments to the fact that they lost in Philly, and maybe they'll show up with a better effort this time against Philly and with some things that Philly doesn't expect. Really, really difficult read in this game. Now, for some reason, Philly flipped from a 1-point dog to a 2.5-point favorite. I'm guessing it was probably because it's probably Embiid or something like that was probably initially not going to play, and now he is, or something like that, because I really don't see a whole lot going on in the injury report in this game that we don't already know about. But the money is agreeing with the Mavs here. 66% of the tickets on the 76ers and 58% of the cash on the Mavs. I'm not going to disagree with the Mavs in this one, but it's really difficult to actually come in and grab the Mavs in that one in the spot that they're in. So I can't play the game, but the money is agreeing on the Mavs for now, for what it's worth. My Boston Celtics are at Sacramento. You know, I don't know about the Sacramento side in this one. The Celtics, yeah, they beat Utah in the last game, but I wasn't like totally on point with that one. I know the Celtics covered. In the end, I got the game right, but the Celtics fell into a hole early in that game, and they really never had a huge margin there. I think they were winning by at most like 11 or 12 in the game. They won by 10. They never actually had a huge margin, even though they did cover, and they were hovering right around that number the whole game. So it was the game was really close to the line the whole time, but the Celtics did get the win against Utah. Now they have a day off. They're going out to the west coast of Sacramento. Now, Sacramento, they're an easy team to overlook. I know that. Like, their top two players are still out, Sabonis and Levine. They're not playing here. Definitely an easy team to overlook, but Sacramento is also a thin roster, and they're just not that good, which I know that's being factored into the line, but Celtics also don't have really a look ahead here, I wouldn't say. The Celtics, they want to win on the road trip at the very least, and if they win this, they'll clinch the road trip, and they are probably not looking ahead to the Clippers, to be honest. Because, I mean, it's the Clippers. I mean, come on. The Celtics did have a close call against the Clippers at home, though, beating them only by 3. But that was a while ago, so I don't know if they're really going to put that much weight into that. Now, for Sacramento, yeah, they just got smoked by the Clippers a couple days ago. They're returning from a road trip, technically, but they're staying in California, but they're going from Southern California back to Northern California here. They only went to L.A., though. It wasn't a long road trip, so it's not really one of those full road trip return spots. Although it's one of these weird situations where they only are at home for 1 day, basically, or 2 days, and they have to get stuff done at home. Whatever they have to get done at home has to get done, and they go back out on the road to face Phoenix next. Kind of weird. They're not going to overlook the Celtics. I don't know. I mean, it's a difficult read, and yes, I guess I would say that because Sacramento got drilled by the Clippers in their last game, it should be a spot where they'll show up with more focus. Nobody wants to lose by 41 points, so they should show up with focus here. The money is somewhat coming in on the Celtics, even though they're public. They're up from 8 to 9.5 here. 81% of the tickets on them, 88% of the cash on the Celtics. Money is somewhat on the side of the Celtics right now. I slightly disagree. I slightly lean to the Kings in this one, but it's not a strong opinion for me, man. I just don't really see the Celtics being that bad of a spot. The Celtics, I mean, they're coming off kind of an ugly effort against the Jazz in the last game. Kings, I know they're coming off a much uglier effort. That's true. But if both teams are going to kind of show some focus in this game, it'll be difficult for the Kings to actually be able to do it against a far better team. It all depends on the motivation, I think, in this one, man. It comes down to, will the Celtics show up? Like, I think the Kings will show up. But if the Celtics do show up, the Kings are going to have a little bit of difficulty. So we will see. Yes, they have to beat up the maid, which is probably, I don't know, racist in some way as well. Because you know the maid is a Latina woman. Like in Family, no. Like in Family Guy, no. All right, Utah Jazz are at the Clippers. You know, I don't really think I like the Jazz in this spot. I think I actually really kind of dislike the Jazz here. I like the music. I don't like the Jazz in this spot. I mean, I would say they didn't really suffer a letdown off of that game against San Antonio, even though I was like, you cannot possibly play the Jazz off of that San Antonio game. And yes, the Celtics did cover, but the Jazz played pretty tough in the game against the Celtics. I'm not going to lie. Now they're going back out on the road, and usually I talk about how a road trip start is usually a focus spot, but are you really going to be focused on the Clippers? I know they're on a hot streak right now, but their record is still atrocious, and Utah still has Golden State next, who still gets all this name recognition. And coming off that big game against Boston, I could see an argument that this is actually a sandwich spot. Clippers are coming off that really easy win over the Kings, but I don't know, man. I mean, do you really get like that high on yourselves after crushing the Kings? Maybe because you won by 41. But I think the Clippers, you could argue they are going to be looking ahead to the Celtics, Golden State, and New York. I mean, that's the main argument that I see against the Clippers in this game, is that it's a look-ahead spot. But I think the look-ahead is a weaker argument than who did you just play. It's tough, man. The money is agreeing with Jeffrey on the Jazz here. I kind of disagree. The Clippers, they're a 12.5-point favorite here, which just looks bizarre. Like, the public is going to look at this game and think, how could you possibly lay 12.5 with an 11-21 team against a 12-20 team? You know, the line just looks crazy. Like, there's something really weird about this line. It looks almost impossible to lay the points here. So I will throw that out there. The Jazz are also significantly worse on the road than they are at home. 4-9 on the road. The Clippers are still all right at home at 7-8. They're actually still better at home than on the road. I know the Clippers have looked better than they actually are probably recently, although to start the season, they looked worse than they actually are. So, but right now they have momentum. And I will point out that in the first half of the NBA season, when you have a team on a 3+ game win streak and they're a favorite, they actually tend to do pretty well, I believe, is a trend in the NBA. I'd have to look up that trend again. I think it applies more to smaller favorites, though. But I think I disagree with the market in that one. I think I would probably lay the points of the Clippers if I was going to play it, but I do not want to. And now we have what everybody wants. We have the college bowl games here. The first game is coming up in less than an hour, so you know I have to get this out here. And, of course, pregame is not behaving for me here, so I have to refresh this thing. I hate when that happens. I don't know, something just messes up on the page here. Is the money being kind of square? Maybe. I mean, I don't know. I mean, professional money, I'm not going to say is square money, but it's like, I don't know. Like, can professionals be square? I don't know. Like, how do you define square, really? I usually kind of just use it to mean the recreational bettors. I don't think the recreational bettors are really playing that game to a large extent, so I don't know. It's a little bit difficult, man. Let's get into this. We're going to have a best bet here in this one, and we're actually getting a better number on it now, which I like. So let's get to the best bets. I thought it might continue to go up, man, but I'm going to tell you there's a difference of opinion in this game because we're going to be on the Oregon side in this one, and hopefully I can repeat what I did last year when I gave you guys Ohio State. Last year was my first football play of the new year. We had a good New Year's Day, I think, especially because it was capped by that Ohio State blowout win over Oregon in the Rose Bowl. We had that win. Public was really in love with Oregon last year, and this year they're not, by the way. And Ohio State was just the better team, man. And they smoked Oregon in that game. So that was a very satisfying win that I gave out on the show with that one. One of the last actual bets that I made, actually it was a few months before I got canned, but yes. Oregon, they're a 1-point favorite here, and we've seen interesting line movement in the game where they opened as a 1-point favorite. They actually got as high as 3. I think it hit 3 very, very briefly this morning. It was teetering on the edge, and it went to 3, and as soon as it hit 3, the 3s got all gobbled up, and it went all the way back to 1. But you still see the cash on the Oregon side, so the market has been weird in this game. 54% of tickets on Texas Tech, 55% of the cash on Oregon. Now, I don't like the fact that all the professionals that I listened to all seem to like Texas Tech in this game, and I don't understand it really. Even because I do situational handicapping, I've learned from the best, Marco D'Angelo, over at Wager Talk. He's a situational capper, but I saw him analyze this game, and he gave out the same situational analysis that I have for this game. But then it's like my power ratings must be different than these guys or something, because he then said, but I still like Texas Tech because I think you're getting value on them, and I think they're actually the better team. I'm going to push back on that. I'm going to say Oregon is the better team here, and they should be a slight favorite in this game, which I'm going to talk about in a second. Some of it has to do with experience and strength of schedule as well, which I think is very heavily in favor of Oregon here. And I don't think he would disagree with that. But I also saw some of the other guys over there. I saw nobody actually give an opinion on Oregon in this game out of the professionals that I listened to, which worries me a little bit. But I'm going with what I've done for a long, long time, man. And this is the situation that we have here. Now, after Ohio State lost yesterday, by the way, the teams coming into this quarterfinal round in college football in the playoffs, since they've changed over to the playoffs, they're 0-5 straight up now. But you do have to take that with a little bit of grain of salt, because last year, two of the teams that had byes last year shouldn't have. Two of them were Arizona State, because they got an auto bye just because they won the Big 12 championship. It was a very weak conference, and I know they made that huge comeback and gave Texas a massive scare, but Texas was about to put that game away, and scatterbooed all over the place, and a bunch of crazy stuff happened. Should have been an easier win for Texas. And then, of course, Boise State was massively outmatched by Penn State, I believe, last year. But college football changed the playoff structure again, so those teams got auto bids just because they won the Mountain West and the Big 12 last year. So this year they didn't do that. So those teams this year got the last seeds in. And of course they still got blown out. But of course that changes that trend a little bit. Like, that's part of the reason why the teams that got byes are 0-5. Like, these are neutral site games. And of course, both Arizona State and Boise State were both double-digit dogs in those games. Like, they were not expected to win, obviously. But the other games that were kind of toss-up games all went towards the teams that already had a game under their belt as well. And yesterday we saw now the biggest upset that we've seen in this college playoff structure easily so far, with what I think is legitimately the number one power-rated team, Ohio State, went down against Miami, which is potentially going to set up an interesting scenario with Carson Beck facing his former team. And maybe I'll talk about that when I talk about the Georgia game, as far as it might be a little bit rigged. Now, in this game, I like Oregon, and what I was alluding to is Oregon just played like a week and a half ago, or less than a week and a half ago, and I think that's good, because you do not want to be a team coming into a game like this with a massive layoff. So one huge positive already for Oregon is they already played a game, and that gives you momentum. And even though they scored a ton of points, I think that the public is going to think they looked kind of bad because Oregon didn't cover the spread. But I think Oregon just eased up on the gas pedal at the end. You know, they knew it was one of those games where they knew they could get in, get out with a win and not have to really focus really intensely on defense in that game. I know Oregon is better offensively than defensively, and usually I don't like teams that profile that way. But they're still kind of a balanced team. They're still good on both sides of the football. So is Texas Tech, but I think Oregon is actually just better on both offense and defense. And I'll show you the strength of schedule in a minute, which I think really puts Oregon over the top a bit in this game. And I think the power ratings guys that I look at, and the odds makers obviously, all have Oregon as a slight favorite over Texas Tech on a neutral here, as you can see. And I actually think the line might not be high enough because the public is actually on Texas Tech because they just like Texas Tech's record a little bit more. And again, I think they don't like the fact that Oregon gave up 35 points to James Madison. But if you watch that game, James Madison had a garbage time score to cover the number at the end of the game. I think Oregon just started looking ahead to this game, all right? Like, they just were like, whatever, we won the game, we don't care anymore. And James Madison put some numbers up in garbage time in that game. Yes, Oregon gave up a ton of yardage, I know, but remember, Oregon was coming into that game off a huge layoff in that situation. So, and a longer layoff than James Madison had, because James Madison played in the Sun Belt Championship game while Oregon had been off for that week because Oregon was not in the Big Ten Championship. So remember, Oregon was coming into that game off of a long layoff. Now Oregon is not coming into this game off a long layoff. They played, and I think they kind of just treated that as kind of a tune-up game. Didn't look that great, so I think you're going to see a much better effort this time from Oregon coming into this. And for Texas Tech, they have not played since the Big 12 title game where they smoked BYU. They've been off for almost a month. I think that's going to be really difficult when this is a one-loss team that's won 6 games in a row, and their loss came in mid-October, and they have not suffered really any adversity since then. It's going to be difficult for Texas Tech, man. I think this could really, really kind of stall their momentum a bit. And I know Texas Tech has a balanced offense. I know they have the ability to run the football. They're not all finesse this year or anything like that. I know. But that long layoff, I think, is going to hurt them. And then also, they have a weak schedule. Like I said, their best wins all year are at Utah was a really good win, although Utah had a lot of turnovers in the game. And then they beat BYU twice. But I think just Texas Tech just matched up well against them. BYU, yeah, they just won the Pop-Tarts Bowl, whatever. BYU's not that great of a team, even though I do like that they have physicality, but whatever. Texas Tech was able to beat BYU a couple of times. But again, those are their best games on the entire schedule. Remember, they did also take a loss to Arizona State, although granted, Texas Tech was without their quarterback in that game, Morton. So yes, they're actually undefeated with Morton playing quarterback. But then again, there's a lot of inexperience here, man. This Texas Tech team, especially with Morton at the helm, they're not used to having any adversity, man. Like, they've had such easy wins. I don't like that. Like, since they lost that game in mid-October, their closest game, like, what was their smallest margin of victory since then? It was by 22 against BYU. That was the smallest margin of victory. So they've had no close games. I don't like that because I think this is likely to be a close game. I would have to imagine if Oregon State's not winning, I'm hoping that I'm right about this, and that if one team is going to be running away with the game a little bit, it's going to be the Oregon side of things here. I'm hoping that's going to be the case, but I don't like a team that's had basically no adversity. You know what I mean? Like, they're just not even used to playing in close games. So then what happens when you get to a playoff and you finally have to play a close game and you're not used to it? I think that's bad. So Oregon is the way more battle-tested team here. Oregon, and the public's going to like the Texas Tech's higher rank than them. I'm not buying it. And Oregon actually is only a one-loss team as well, but look at who they played. They played Penn State back when Penn State was still looking to have playoff aspirations or whatever. And I know Penn State fell apart and had a bad season, but they bounced back a bit at the end of the season. Penn State still is a super talented team, man. And Oregon going into Happy Valley and beating them, that was still a really good win for Oregon in that game. And yes, Oregon played a similarly weak out-of-conference schedule to Texas Tech. I know Texas Tech was even weaker than Oregon's, I think. I don't know. I mean, Oregon played some weak-ass teams as well because Northwestern was a conference game. It was just weirdly early in the season, so whatever. Both teams started off with pretty easy games, but then Oregon played a lot of teams that battle-tested them, man. They lost at home to Indiana. We see how good Indiana is. Indiana's a legit top 2 team in the country, man. And Oregon lost to them at home. No shame in that. Oregon beat Iowa on the road at Iowa, and they had a really close game. We saw Iowa is quite good. Nice game from them yesterday. I know you don't want to put much weight into a bowl game where motivation might be in question, but that Iowa team, we saw them play really well against Indiana as well. Iowa, absolutely legit, especially on defense. Oregon, that was a nice win for them on the road at Iowa. A tough environment to go into there. And then Oregon did beat USC decisively. Nice win there. Winning on the road at Washington actually was pretty solid as well. Washington, pretty good team under the radar. So Oregon, they are much, much more battle-tested. And then, of course, Oregon was here last year, man. So we all remember it. Oregon, not in this. I wish they were in the Rose Bowl here because I would love it even more if they were in the Rose Bowl and they returned to the actual scene of the crime. That's not the case. They're playing in Miami. This game's at the Orange Bowl. So the location isn't really an edge for either team, I wouldn't say. But for Oregon, even though, yes, they have to travel from Oregon to Miami here, but they have since December 20th to do it, so they're fine. Anyway, Oregon in the Rose Bowl last year, we know they got absolutely embarrassed by Ohio State in that game, so I think they're going to be out for redemption in this game. And you know Oregon must have a number of players that were in that game last year. You know, I think they have the same coach. They have a different quarterback, I know, because last year it was Dylan Gabriel. This year they have Moore, so I know Moore also isn't very experienced as far as being in a game like this. Both quarterbacks are not experienced in games like this, but Oregon's players, their program was in this exact spot last year, man, and got embarrassed. So they have the experience. Texas Tech, this is a Texas Tech team we don't even know. I really don't think we know exactly what they are because they're just not that battle tested, and they have not been in a situation like this before. Like, they just basically fed the program with all this oil money coming into this game, and we're going to see what happens. This game's on ESPN, by the way, sponsored by Capital One. They're going to have those stupid credit card commercials running throughout the game here. But, yeah, I just like it for Oregon, man. The fact that they played more recently, I think that's a huge edge for them, having that game out of the way. The fact that they didn't look that great in the game, I think, is all right as well. I think they're actually better than they looked in that game. And Texas Tech, I think, could be a bit of a fish out of water here, man. So experience matters. And the fact, again, that Oregon was here last year. And last year, you remember, Oregon was the team that the public liked last year in that game against Ohio State. And Oregon was in the situation where they came in having all that time off. They hadn't played since they'd won the Big Ten championship and hadn't played since then. Everybody loved them at that point, and they were just flat. They came in cold. This time, they're the team that's on the opposite side of things this time, so it's almost flip-flop. So last year, the public loved them, and they were the team that had way too much rest. They had rust. This team, Texas Tech, is that side, and Oregon State is on the opposite side of things. So this really reminds me of that game in a lot of ways. It's just that Oregon is on the right side of it this time. So that's what we're going to go with. The under is getting play in this game as well. Texas Tech, the total, is down from 52 to 50.5. 51 is a key number, though. So if you like the under, I think you have to try to get the 51. I don't know if it'll be out there anymore, though. 70%, it might if the public starts getting involved very late here. 70% of tickets on the over, 52% of the cash on the under. But yes, Oregon will be my play for the playoff slate today here. Hopefully we can get it done, man. That's the one that I had my eye on. I like it. It was one of those games where when I filled out my bracket, that was one of those like leverage spots where it's like the public's going to be on Texas Tech and Oregon's probably actually going to be favored here and be in the better situational spot. So it makes sense. So I took Oregon in my bracket there. We'll see what my bracket's still alive-ish technically because I took Indiana to win the whole thing, but we'll see. Over Ohio State, though, so I'm not going to be winning anything with that. Let's see. Saab is in here now. Saab, what's up, man? Yeah, correct. You liked my down with the sickness. Thank you, sir. Saab with his Nets win streak. I disagree. I completely disagree with Saab on that one. So who do you trust more? I think it's either you take the Nets or you just leave it alone, in my opinion. I don't like it at all. So, yeah, the Warriors covered. The Nets got blown out in that game, man. Yeah, I disagree with Saab on that one, and the money in the market seems to agree with me on that one for what it's worth. You like Washington, and then Saab is looking too far ahead, I think. He's trying to play some 5D chess here. I don't even know what he's talking about here, but I haven't looked at any of those games yet. Washington, Brooklyn, something about the Bucks. I don't know. You guys can read that. I guess it's a fade spot for the Wizards. I'll see it when I see it. I disagree. Houston is, of course, going to be a big favorite like that because it's against the Nets and they're Houston. I don't agree. I think Houston has no reason to pay attention to the Nets at all. You can go back and see my analysis on that. I think Houston is going to have a look ahead to Dallas in their next game because that's a Texas. I'm believing in the Nets' magic by believing that the Nets will cover that number in the game today. And the market is speaking to me in that game as well. All right, let me go back here. What did I just do? Oh, crap. I think I got rid of the board here. No. Well, we can just look at the scores here. I guess that'll be easier. All right, we have the Rose Bowl presented by Prudential, which is always the mid-afternoon game, ESPN. Number 9, Alabama. Number 1, Indiana. Now, of course, Alabama is in that spot that Oregon is in which Alabama already has a game under their belt. And people did not believe in Alabama, although I did. I gave you Alabama as a play on the show. We got the win with Alabama. Now, Indiana is, of course, a different animal. Oklahoma is obviously a lot weaker than Indiana. Alabama got the job done. They surprised everyone. Now, the question is the public now buying Alabama a little bit more than they were otherwise? maybe. But Alabama does have momentum, man. And Indiana, the last time we saw Indiana, they won the Big Ten championship over Ohio State. So Indiana could not possibly have looked better, though now people might not love that win as much that Ohio State lost yesterday. But Indiana beat Ohio State in their last game that we saw them in. And now Indiana's the team with the long layoff, coming off a monster win against Ohio State. And Alabama's the team that I think might actually even still be under the radar. I just don't know if people are going to give them a lot of credit for beating Oklahoma, even though public loves scoring, and Alabama scored in that game. But I think if you're going to play this game, you got to play the team that has the momentum under their belt, which is Alabama. And I think Alabama, I actually think they're a legitimate, top 5 team or so in college football, believe it or not. I think Alabama's just been very under the radar. Now, of course, they do have an inexperienced quarterback with Simpson, so you do have to worry about that, and their offense is one-dimensional. So Indiana, they do have a really good defense this year, and Indiana might be able to stop Alabama's offense because Alabama has to throw the ball pretty much. But that does mean that Alabama might be able to come back and get in the back door in this game or something because they are just going to be throwing the ball. Alabama doesn't run the ball well, which, I don't love that style of offense generally, but Alabama does play good defense. Indiana also does. Yeah, Indiana probably does have the better offense here. They're actually probably better on both sides of the ball, though I think the defenses are closer to each other. I think, yeah, Indiana is the more balanced team here. There's a reason why Indiana's favored, obviously. They're up from 6-7 here. The money actually looks like it's coming in on Indiana a little bit. 54% of the tickets, 58% of the cash on Indiana. Take that for what it's worth here. I think the under is worth a look in this game too because Alabama just played a really high-scoring game. So I think the public might kind of be swayed in that direction. You're still getting under what I think is a somewhat high number of 47.5. You're looking at two teams that definitely have good defenses. 47.5 seems high to me, man. And it's a key number as well, 47. 67% of tickets on the over, 64% of the cash on the over. I think under is definitely worth a look here. I lean Alabama plus the 7 or 7.5 as well for those momentum reasons again. And that's about it. I mean, Indiana does have the QB advantage. Although, do you think, will Mendoza be a little bit too hyped because he got the Heisman? I don't think so. I mean, this is the playoffs. You're not going to be in a letdown mode when you're in the playoffs and you're trying to win a national championship. And now Ohio State is out of the way. But if Indiana wins this game, if Oregon wins, I think Indiana is going to have a big test against Oregon if that happens. I think Indiana will only be a small-ish favorite in that game, probably of a few points, so we'll see. And then we have the Sugar Bowl, which is in New Orleans. Of course, the Rose Bowl is in Pasadena. I'm sure everybody knows that, in California, so neither of those teams have a site advantage. Now, in this game, Sugar Bowl in Louisiana, New Orleans, you might say, well, Mississippi is closer to New Orleans. Yes, they are, but I actually think the site advantage is actually Georgia's, because Georgia played in this game last year and Georgia lost the game and they have the same quarterback. And if you remember, it was a situation where Gunnar Stockton kind of got thrown to the wolves in that game. And it was a weird game where, if you remember, the vehicular homicide situation happened and they had to delay the game by a day. If you remember that, Georgia wound up losing to Notre Dame. Gunnar Stockton got thrown to the wolves in that game and as a very inexperienced quarterback. Now, Gunnar Stockton has not only experience now of playing for an entire year here and starting to come into his own and look pretty good, but he literally played in this game last year and lost the game to Notre Dame. And by the way, this Ole Miss defense is not as good as that Notre Dame defense was last year. So Stockton and this Georgia offense should be able to put up points against Ole Miss in this game. And so I like the experience. I like the fact that Georgia literally lost the same game last year. They're used to it now. They were here last year. They're going to want try number 2. I think they're going to win the game, man. And I know we have another data point here where Ole Miss did play at Georgia earlier this year, and I liked Georgia to cover in that game, and they did, but Ole Miss blew a 17-point lead, I think, in the fourth quarter of that game, something like that, and Georgia somehow wound up covering the number and winning by 8, and I think covering the 7-point spread or whatever. So then you have to ask yourself, which team is going to be the team to make adjustments, right? Because, yeah, Georgia won the game, so Ole Miss might make adjustments, but also Ole Miss was winning the game for the majority of the game against Georgia, so Georgia has adjustments to make as well. So I don't really think there's that much of a zigzag component in this game. I think if anything, Georgia didn't play that well. Now, yes, because I did just say Georgia, I think they were a 7 or an 8-point favorite in that game. Yes, the line value is kind of not there on Georgia here, because if they were an 8-point favorite on a neutral, whatever, against Ole Miss, or excuse me, at home, against Ole Miss, on a neutral, they should probably be about a 5-point favorite, and we're seeing 6.5. But those are also dead numbers, so I still think if it's Georgia at below 7, I still think that's the way I have to lean in this game, at below a touchdown, because the line value, I think, it's just not as important when you're dealing with like dead numbers, although 6 is not totally a dead number, but 75% of tickets, only 71% of the cash on Georgia. So they look like the public side, which I am worried about a little bit. The public does like Georgia. Looks like the money is a little bit in disagreement with that. So I worry about that. I'm not going to play the game, but I like the experience factor here. We have the same team, same QB that lost this game last year. They're going to be out to redeem themselves from that. Ole Miss, we don't know exactly how they're going to continue to respond to Lane Kiffin being out of there, although Ole Miss had no problems against Tulane. It was an easy win for Ole Miss against Tulane. Maybe they looked too good in that game. I don't know. It was an easy win. Ole Miss had done that before this year as well, beating Tulane at home as well. I just don't think there's really anything you can draw from that game other than, yes, Ole Miss does have the momentum here, so that's the one thing. Georgia is one of these dreaded teams that has a bye coming into this, and they have not played since they looked really good in the SEC championship game and clobbering Alabama in the SEC championship. That's the last time we saw Georgia, so that's another reason why I can't really get there with Georgia in this one, because they have a long layoff after one of their best wins of the season, and that was actually even bigger because Alabama's really had Georgia's number recently. So that worries me about Georgia, and the fact that Ole Miss has momentum now after what really was kind of a tune-up against Tulane now coming into this. So I do worry about that. It's a tough game to handicap here. So that almost counters the experience, I think, in this game, because in a way, Georgia, the setup for them is almost similar to Indiana's. It's just that at least Georgia has experience literally playing in this exact bowl game. So we'll see what happens. It looks like some money's coming back in on Oregon now, and kind of they look like they might be an anti-public favorite, man, up until game time. Hopefully, we'll see. But that's going to do it, man. I'm going to probably have to watch the market, though, and see, because I really don't have a strong conviction on that Georgia one. I think the way that I would rank these is obviously Oregon being my play is my favorite of the three. Alabama plus the points, if you're getting 7.5 is the next best. And then Georgia minus the points is the weakest. Although if it hits 7, I think you might really have to start considering Ole Miss in that one. And that's going to do it. So once again, my plays today are a bunch of college basketball. UC Davis minus the 3.5. UC-Riverside plus 7.5, or whatever the best you can get is. And Montana State minus 2.5 or minus 3. And then, of course, Oregon minus 1. Or if you see a money line that's really good on Oregon, that also might be a decent way to look. I can actually try to look at it right now and see if Action Network can help me out here. Let's see. What do we got here on the money line for Oregon here? Oh, God. They have Oregon listed twice because they put all the bowls at once here. Let me see. You can get minus 1. Ooh. You can get minus 112 on the money line for Oregon. You can get that, or you can lay minus 1 at minus 105. Or no, minus 1.5 at minus 105. You know what? I think the money line is better in this case. We'll do money line, Oregon, minus 112. That'll be how I do it. But if you want to lay 1, I think that's fine as well. To me, it looks like the number's going to go up a little bit as well. But I'll put it in the show notes. That's going to do it. I got to get my Instagram video out, and I got to get this up on the audio. The audio is always probably too late for people to listen to it. They might know to skip ahead to college football. Maybe I should have done it before I did NBA, because I should do it chronologically, because NBA is the later sport today, but, whatever. People like football last. That's going to do it. Learn to Toad on Instagram. Learn to Toad on Twitter. I got subscriptions there now. You can check it out. Like, subscribe here. Give me good reviews, etc. Let's get it done, man. Toadstool Sports is on audio as well. Give me good reviews over there. Give me good replies on YouTube, I should have said, but give me good reviews on the audio on Spotify and Apple. That helps me out as well. Listening helps me out over there as well. Covered in Uke is my Uke channel. You can go find that Disturbed cover. I'm probably going to start putting some behind the Twitter subscription paywall now that it's a new year. We will see. So there is that. We got the Loser Cast. You can go check that out. We did a new episode this week as well. You can go vote for one of my 2 losers. I forget who I even picked. Oh, I had the bear guy, Ken Johnson, who has a bear living in his house, and I did who was my Stephon Diggs was my other guy. You should appreciate that. He was one of my losers, so you can check Loser Cast out. And I did an impromptu late night New Year's stream on the Tower Gang channel with Clint last night, which I got to delete from the YouTube, but you can still find it on Rumble. I'm going to leave it up there. And I think it was on his Twitter, and it's on the Tower Gang Twitter. We classified it as Tower Gang. It was me, Clint, and then Tyler joined. We were all over the place, man. Some serious talk, some Tower Gang-esque stuff. I don't know. Clint wanted to do it. We had some fun with it. That's going to do it. You guys can go check that out. You agree with my plays? All right, thank you. Yes. I don't have a play on that, but yeah, I'm going to agree. I'm going to lean to the Nets in that one. Thank you, Jeffrey. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out. I believe in my handicapping, man. That's what I believe in. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for hanging out. Peace.